I'm fine, Mrs. West, how are you? When Mr. Mont's duty of some days.
Right.
And the old one was doing this unconscious to
I
herself.
know,
But they used to think it was very funny. Like
now,
one
the
was doing
Gaelic is McTague, you see.
McTague,
McTague, and there was McTague. There was a Beatty married at McTague, wasn't there? Do you remember that man, Beatty? Was she McTague? He was a potato inspector. There in their day.
I do remember they went to London.
Dungiven, and I think his wife was a McTague from somewhere.
Well, then they were connected with Joe McManaman's.
Well, we better sort out these Donnellys.
I'm fine, Mrs. Wells, how are you? When Mr. Mont's duty of some days.
Right.
And the old one was doing this unconscious to
I
herself.
know,
But they used to think it was very funny. Like one
now,
was
the
doing
Gaelic is McTague, see.
McTague,
McTague, and there was McTague. There was a Beatty married at McTague, wasn't there? Do you remember that man, Beatty? Was she McTague? He was a potato inspector. There in their day.
I do remember they went to Dungiven.
Dungiven, and I think his wife was a McTague from somewhere.
Well, then they were connected with Joe McManaman's.
Well, we better sort out these Donnellys first.
Yes.
They were also benefactors to the church, as far as I know.
Where?
Aye.
There was old Dick.
Aye.
And him had a lot to do about getting the ground for the church.
Yes,
And getting £100 from Mr. Leaper.
yes.
Went to Cookstown, which belonged to Desert Martin.
Uh-huh.
And went with them over to London to the Rivers
I
Company
know, aye.
to
Got
get
the
that
grant.
ground for it.
I know.
They were very diplomatic crowd apparently, kept well in, respectable Presbyterians.
Aye, well, of course, at that time there was more friendship between Presbyterians and Catholics, because that was the period when Presbyterians were still United Irishmen.
That's a lot of them were
You
there.
see, they only became Orange men about 1880.
Yes, that broke away there.
It did. And there remained, there was a liberal tradition amongst them, a home rule tradition amongst Presbyterians.
Amongst these would have got to the Donnellys all work for schools or
I know.
bridges or anything like that.
Well, now, we come to Willie Donnelly, we were talking about the sick now, and maybe
Yes.
and Alice. He was the son of
Hugh Donnelly,
a butcher, was he?
butcher, went to Belfast to serve his time as a young man to McCann's, to the
Now,
butchering
she was
business.
born in this town, of course.
He was born where Bradley's is living.
Bradley, Yankee Bradley.
Yankee Bradley's. And then from there he went to America
Yes.
and came home again. But before he came home, met this girl, Keen from Ahageskin, an American, married her.
Keenan.
Keen.
Now, was that Maggie Keenan, any friend of Maggie Keenan?
Maggie's sister, Mary,
Down at Butler's Bridge.
down Butler's Bridge,
Right.
Johnny Keen's sister. He
I
married
see.
her and then came home again
Uh-huh.
to start the butchering business of his own.
Well, would he have started, he was in the butchering line, were they in the cattle line at that time?
Keen's were in the cattle line.
Yes, always had been.
Always had been in that line.
Where did they come from originally?
Well, no, I never traced them from anywhere,
natives
only
here.
Ahageskin,
I
the
see,
Keens.
aye.
They were a very good old crowd and they were mixed in
Uh-huh.
to the Donnellys a lot,
Aye.
different branches of them.
Aye.
They were mixed in the Keens a lot with the Keels and the Donnellys,
Aye.
mine and wee man.
Well, he was the first of them to take up butchering, was he?
He was the first one that took it up, and Moultrie Street.
Uh-huh.
And then he moved from one side of Moultrie Street over to the other.
I see. And their mother was,
Mary Keene, if I guess,
of course,
Maggie's sister.
Well, now there's a connection then, they're cousins of people called Morris from Dunamore.
But those Morrises are cousins to the Keenans, if I guess.
Oh, now explain that now, for I wanted to know
Well, no,
their
I cannot be
cousins.
sure of that. They're how they are.
Because I was talking to Tom Morris here yesterday week,
Yes,
and he's a cousin of the Donnellys, of Mimi Donnelly,
yes. Well, that's through her mother's side of the house.
through her
Her
mother's
side
side.
of, there's some of those Morrises lived somewhere between Moneymore and Cookstown.
Oh yes, they had a farm near Moneymore, these Morris.
Well, there was one of them came to look after children in Laura Higgins at first. I love
That's
big
right.
girl. And that's how I knew the Morrises were connected with the Keenans.
I know.
From meeting her, and she used to visit down there,
I know.
I guess.
Well, now, isn't that, you see, those were, in those days, Well, they probably was the Welches and the Donnellys and the Keenans
Yes.
and the McKennas were the big families right here.
McKenna's came originally from Draperstown. You're
That's right.
speaking about McKenna's butter and egg.
That's right.
McKenna's McNamees came from Draperstown. They
Yes,
came
I
later
know, I
on
see,
in
yeah.
life. They came
They
later
were
on
in our
life.
mother's time.
And the Donaghy's.
Aye.
Those three.
That
McKenna's
family
and
came.
McNamees and Donaghy's.
Well, this relationship and power would come up through marriages, like they were marriage amongst each
When
other,
they were married,
and
they
their
married
wealth
like
then got
the
together.
old families
I
like
know, that's
stay
what it
together.
was,
They wouldn't dream of having anyone from a distance.
No,
at
that's
all.
true. Not of a lower
See,
strata in
Not at
society.
all. And then Mary Ann, that's the aunt I was here, she married Mickey Kilt.
The kids were a pair too.
And then Mickey Kilt had a cousin, Rosie Kilt, and she married Felix Donnelly.
You see,
And
they're
she
all
would
really.
be Colin's grandmother, Rosie and Felix.
Uh,
Felix was very polite, different wee man. You know.
uh-huh.
He'd built the houses, some of the houses in King Street, you know.
Yes.
And Rosie was Sister Kilt. And she'd clap, 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 clap it on. The two were so different in nature.
You
And
spoke there when we were talking about an Uncle Joe. Who's Uncle Joe?
Uncle Joe, he was known as Uncle Joe the Hare. It's my mother's
Yes, I
brother.
heard Joe the Hare. My father, you speak about Joe the Hare.
I
Well,
think everybody was the man from Hill County, Joe the Hare. He was the youngest of the family, you see,
yeah,
and he was only 6 months' birth.
yes.
So, of course, wrapped in cotton wool.
Uh-huh.
But from that to my grandmother died, my say was wrapped in cotton wool.
I see. A spoiled boy.
Would not allow him to go to school.
Uh-huh.
No matter about, they went to Drumrainey school, you see,
Yes.
mixed school.
Uh,
But would she let that poor thing, that blood was only warming, go to school? Be dead in 2 days. Out ploughing, men out ploughing, she kept him running after the plough. And he was running just way up and down the fields, they called him the Hare Donnelly.
so you got the nickname.
And she thought there was nothing like him.
Uh-huh.
Well then, he got into McManamons through the relationship, and with what they call the man, Ballyrunning, that used to have the meal place. Gorson. Well, there was Gorsons here.
There was.
Got on the Gorson, they got on the Lavery's and Moy, in McLaren's, and was crazy.
Horseman.
Horse racing. Had a horse, racehorse
yeah.
himself, and a glass of amber whiskey, he said. And a packet of cards playing Joe McManus to the morning. And he used to even go for all that. Now. And he said what he regretted afterwards. The mother never said, "You're doing wrong, Joe."
Uh-huh.
But he says sometimes he'd hear the sisters saying, "What's to become? Leave him alone." Is the best child to have. But he said that then when he did give it up, he thought, was that any way to treat her? He talked about that the week before he died.
Mm-hmm. What age did he die at?
At 90.
I knew there was
90
have
years
loved
of
a good
age
age,
and no grey hairs,
No.
Father Louis, and complained of his stomach like myself all his life.
Your hair's nice, baby,
And
the night.
carried his baking soda in his pocket. And at 89 he's down to me this day and he says, "Are you not ashamed of yourself?" I says, "Why, why do they now?" "Grey hairs." "Look at your Uncle Joe," he says. Not a grey hair in his
Well, you have nice little curls in it.
Well,
nice.
I says, you know, my path in the early years wasn't as easy as yours.
Oh, no,
I had
it's
nobody
true,
to
it's
wrap
true.
me in cotton wool.
Well, you know,
But
it's
he
an
was a
argument.
great mixer.
I know, but it's an argument against those that say a dissipated life will be a short one. To all intents and purposes, his life was dissipated.
He said that
Horses and amber whiskey and
yes,
cards.
he told me himself the last time I was up to see him, he's going over his grain, trotting ponies and all that sort of thing. No one's a
Up to see him where?
And Cookstown.
I see, right.
So, talking about it all, then he started to talk about how much he did drink. And I would go up beside the workhouse and singing. And my mother sat down and said, "You're home, Joe, son." "Aye, Ma. Oh, well, thank God for that, you're all right." But she never said a word the next morning. So I said, "Did you not find it very hard giving up that drink?" "Oh," he says, "the sisters never scolded me. They stormed heaven, but they never scolded." "Oh," I says, "I done it to scold their brother. Sure, they were all in panicles with them. So their brother never did wrong." Says I with a whole lot of them. Well, he says, "I went up to your father's in Bancroft, and there's a great place for company," he says. "And if you wanted to take anybody for a holiday, take them up to Mathis and Bancroft and at a public house. That was the best thing of all.
Now who's Mathis?
My father, my
Yeah,
mother.
well, I
you
will
see.
come to you in a moment.
So he says, every morning after my breakfast, right now, your ma was very decent. She brought on a good glass of whiskey and sat down the table. You'd be glad of that, show. He says, I'll get one after dinner time. And he says, your father would bring on one at night before you go to bed. The time O'Reilly, he says. And he says, this morning we're sitting at the breakfast and she says, Judy, you know where you and I are going tomorrow? No, I don't, Maggie. Just guess. She said, maybe to Glasgow. Because she says she was fond of taking wee trips. No, Joe, we're not going to Glasgow. We're going to Loch Derg.
Oh, I
Right
see.
you are, Maggie. Right place for a woman, but it's no place for a man.
Yeah.
Oh, now, Joe, you'll come with us. And he says she was one that didn't fight with you, but she said, if she said that, she didn't fight, but you were there before you knew where you were. So he says he went out with father, round there to look at the kettle. And this was, and he said, if I stay here, she'll have me to look at.
Aye.
So he says, I just walked on down the road onto Driftstown. And I went into Mrs. Kane's. And I had
That's
two
me,
glasses.
that's mother. Aye.
Yes, I had 2 glasses of whiskey. Doing very well, says Jay to myself, Joe, you make for the train in case this one would come after you. And I gets onto the train, he says, and there was 3 priests in the carriage. And he says one of them was a McKeever from Desert Martin.
Yeah.
They were home from America. Well, he said, at that much, even I had the glasses of whiskey, and he says, respect for the priesthood, and was ashamed of my breath.
Uh-huh.
So he says, turn down the window. And he said to them, don't mind father if turn down the window. Not at all, not at all. She tell us it's just having a drink and I'm sure you get the fumes of it off me. But they got on conversation anyhow. And he told, of course, the history and about his mother and doing the way he neglected her and her no fault to find and all this sort of thing. So she just put my hand in my pocket. There's pocket every money I had to give it to one of these priests, see you can say a mass for me. And see you'll end up the best of anything. They're the best of their family, he says, and they don't know the rest of them. So he got off the station and goes into Miss Otterson's, you know where McLean's
Yes,
is.
that's right.
Met some man, and he says a thing he never did was drink stout. But within this man, he wanted a bottle of stout. I ordered a bottle of stout, but he says he couldn't drink it. And said to Marianne, that stout's bad. No, Joe, she says, I'll pull you now. No, don't, he says, that's turned me against it. I walked out of the door of the man saying, time to go over to Mickey Keel's. And so instead of that, I walked on and discovered myself at the railway station. And the Belfast train just comes swimming in. 3 heads stuck out of a window. Joe, Joe, Joe. She's your mother's pals. So I went over, Joe, get on, get on. No, ladies. Oh, you're coming to Loch Derg with us. Man, you go and pray for me at Loch Derg, I'm all right, but tell them about just down here. Just crushed them under the carriage.
So the train was coming from there?
From Belfast.
From Belfast.
Going to Draperstown.
I
To
see.
join mother. Going to Loch Derg.
Aye. Oh, aye.
So he says up to went, but he kept very tight watch on him. And he says he went to Loch Derg. Well, he says, never will I forget what I went through at Loch Derg. And he says no matter what way he turned, all he could see in front of his eye was a beautiful glass of amber whiskey. You know, to see the real Bushmills. Second day, says this man Campbell came on that he knew. He says, oh my God, Joe Donny, what is you here? So you may say, he says, I feel sister. Things will get off the drink. And to say, you can see nothing when the glass of whiskey in front of the man says, last time here for children come on to the DTs. Oh God help the both of us, see, but if I would get off that boat and as far as Betty could say, I'll have 1 glass of whiskey anyhow, never mind the sister and her friends. And he says, like when they would meet him, they would say, you're doing nicely, Joe. Doing nicely. I'm in torture, I can't pray. But he came out and he says he passed by Petco. And he lived till he was 90 and never tasted sherry again.
Never tasted anything.
Never tasted that. And I said, oh, so was that not great willpower? I says, going into McManam's to these old pals.
I know.
Again, never. No willpower at all. Your mother died, he says. That was in August, your mother died of all in February. And he says, I never had an inclination for a glass of whiskey. It was no fight with me. And I went down to Joe McManam's and I joined the party, card players, and every day I had a cigar.
But it was good of them not to force him actually
No.
when you think of his pals.
No, he said he had
Like
a
they
cigar.
respected this.
And he kept smoking the cigar
I know.
until he was over 60 years of age. Then I said he dropped the cigar and then decided to go to mass every morning.
I know.
Sort of wonderful, like
What?
through that, and all they dying just after.
I know. Well, were the Donnellys friends of the Donnellys of Draperstown then, too, the doctor people?
Well, that the woman that was Rosie Kilt, and the husband was Felix Donnelly. They had two sons, Neil Donnelly, that place was left, and Hugh. Hugh went to Rainy School here. And the man used to say she'd make him a clergyman man or a doctor.
Well.
The rest used to keep her going, like Rosie what are you going to make Hugh? But the doctor he was. And then he got married to a girl up round Draperstown. And they have 3 sons and 1 daughter. One of the sons died very young.
The daughter's a doctor?
The daughter's doctor, Mary and Frank.
I see. Well, they were all very brainy, these people, I think.
They were. They were great readers. Great readers, the whole lot of.
And there was a kind of a near insanity, which is genius.
It was
too.
just, as near as Mrs. Keith used to say, that Felix's crowd, she called Mrs. Gallagher and Mrs. Collins and Rosie. But she said, they weren't good looking. And God forgive me.
No, they're not, truthfully.
God forgive me, when I was young, she said, I could have killed your mother. But whenever there was a party on in our house, I must run down to Felix's once. And she says, I was ashamed to reduce them.
I got between us and all, like they were not beauties, right?
For they were that coarse looking. But she says they had brains to burn.
They were very intelligent.
And she never knew that old Mrs. Gallagher had noticed this. She says, her mother would say, oh, so your good looks will cover theirs. There'll be no opposition to you, there's men in the carpet. But she says she would have had them. They're cousins and they just come.
Well, who was Martin Gallagher now before we go from
Martin Gallagher's wife told me after.
He was a farmer just.
Not like an Aunt Kit. Bedouin things, she says, she'd have hardly noticed you. But she says there was no party there but your mother to come flying round the road to bring the 3 of us up to it. She knew that already. Martin Gallagher, no, he didn't.
Was he a farmer right there all the time?
No, he wasn't. He went to Belfast service time to the Spirit Grocery, if you remember that fellow.
Well, again, we'll come to that. The Donnellys were in the Spirit line a lot too in Belfast. Were they friends?
They were friends too. And this Dr. Donnelly went to Belfast.
Hugh
Donnelly. Hugh, to go to the Queen's.
I know.
He had an aunt, Mary Jane Donnelly, was married to a butcher named McCann in Belfast.
I see.
She then advised these 3 nieces to come to Belfast. And she had influence there. And she got them in to dressmaking. They were in Arnott's. But she had a feeling that they weren't good looking, but if she got them in there, at the back door, they would drive the front door no time.
Good looking. If they weren't good looking,
they had the brains. One of them was a head cutter.
Yes.
And the other was a head fitter. And at that time, like equality didn't have ready-mades.
No, it's true.
The judges and surgeons.
I know the quality that would support that.
They supported that. And then they brought Cassie. And Cassie did the housekeeping for them. And then she got married to
I God rest all the stead. My mother would talk about these people like glibly, Cassie, like these names. But we didn't know anything about them. And it's only now that Mona and I be pondering who they are.
Well, then she met this Gallagher man in Belfast. And he had served his time to Spurgeon.
God, he wasn't good looking either. As far as I remember him, he was an ugly looking, cross-looking old man.
Old thing. Well, then she got married to him and went into the business with him.
Spirit trade.
And the grocery. The 2 in 1, they could get married used to be. So they went into that business and she helped him out, and there was no children. The other sister, Rosie, she married a man named McQuillan from around Balahi.
Yes, another odd looking man, not too good looking.
And a crap old thing.
And children not too good looking.
Oh, they're
Chinese
terrible.
looking.
Oh, God bless her.
Well,
Dr. Tony's awful looking. And so is Kathleen.
mm-hmm.
Well, then the other one, Cassie, she got married to the policeman.
That's the Mrs. Cullen got rest her,
And they were very angry at her marrying a policeman.
Uh-huh.
Didn't like that at all.
That was about the first drop in the social
That
scale.
was the first drop. And he was from up the country,
Uh-huh.
you see.
Was he stationed here at the time?
He's stationed in Belfast.
Oh, of course, that's right.
Then they got married anyhow, but like that got over as far as the children were concerned. And the Gallagher wouldn't see them without an education.
Yeah.
As long as for education, the money would be handed out,
Yes.
you see. And then the McQuills, there's 3 of them doctors.
Straight out of brainy all
James
these people.
and Brian and Tony.
And the girl, what she
Father
become?
I ever in my life seen a kosher looking man and you Tony McQuill.
No, they were
He's
Oriental
super
looking. They were Oriental looking. I always thought.
Terrible. And even the sister Kathleen,
Uh-huh.
she's still as old as her brother. And
We would see them coming on their holidays to Gallagher's.
up to Gallagher's. They all went on to Gallagher's, as they called her.
But I wonder why they.
Well,
Why,
there was a girl and doctor too, wasn't there?
Yes, she's in England. James went, and James died very suddenly. We had this great practice in Wales someplace, a beautiful home. Cousin of mine was over and spent a holiday with him. And there was some dinner on this night, and he was very tired, and Kathleen, that's the one from Belfast now, was housekeeper and had a girl for the cleaning up.
I know.
And as he was getting ready for some priest to go with him to it, and she said, James, surely hurry up before Father so-and-so comes in. He says, dear, but I do not feel like going to dinner tonight. I feel like going to my bed. Oh, be sorry for yourself. You can't disappoint the people now. And he went out with the priest, went to the dinner, and there was very bad mist on the road. And coming back again, there was a road at the place forth that way, and one that way. And he got the car there, but he couldn't see right whether he was on the right road or not. He went to get out of the car to walk and see, and he hit his head there.
On the car door.
On the top, the hood, remember the old hood, hit it there, but a few minutes he's all right again, and he walked on to find it, and he walked on the wrong road till he came to this wee stream of water. Just fell and was got dead there the next morning. And the poor priest sitting in the car.
Wouldn't he come back?
Waiting his come back, and he couldn't get out for he didn't know which way he went. And he sat on till it got clear.
Oh.
And then he went, Jim just lying, a little bit of water. They think that it was the concussion was
indeed.
delayed. And then you see he fell just in that much, so many inches of water.
Dear, oh.
So they were terribly upset about him. But this Tony boy, the third boy, he had been in Belfast and he was in, the university grandfather, gambling on a horse and having an odd drink. When the horse came up, it was goodbye then with the horse. They were begging and borrowing then. But old McQuillan was very strict, and I suppose the mother thought this wee wild streak would go over with him, but he was down his exam. So old Dan McQuillan.
What did Dan do now?
The father, he was in the spirit. He was in the spirit. Well, he would put Tony out there, go and sweep the streets. So the mother wrote to James and told about the awful fuss up in the house. So James came over, and he said to the father, I'm tired of this. And you'd put any fellow wrong. From the day, he says, I went to university. Brian went through the same, and he says, Tony's went through the same. Hurry up till you pay me back the money I've spent on you. He says, you're not a fella. He says, we didn't ask to be brought into the world. He says, and this of casting all the time is no good. I'm spending more money. No, see, you're just right, keep it. I'm taking Tony now, he says. I'm taking him from Belfast, so he to send to the university in Edinburgh. And he did well.
But they still remain friendly with the Gallaghers.
Oh, still with Andy Gallagher.
But we started off this by saying there was genius in them all.
Aye, well, in that crowd there was genius and a peculiarity.
Oh yes, definitely.
And you can see it even in the congregation.
They're a bit aloof from the general run.
Yes, they are. And all the Auntie Gallagher's like that, too.
She was, but I would say that that it wasn't their fault. I mean, Martin Gallagher was an aloof person anyway.
He was, oh God, last year I went out, I used to go out to for Bottomon. 3 o'clock in the day near the mountains and a great big Bible and the glasses on the nose. Her eye went out, just excuse me, I'm reading a passage. He said to you were good out still reading that passage.
Well, why did he want to go to farming? He must have made his money in the spirit
No,
trade.
she wasn't feeling well.
Yes.
The old lady wasn't feeling well. And of course, money knocked her retire, you see. So the doctor advised her to get out of Belfast
Yes.
and out of the business.
Well, he owned that wee place. He
Altogether.
couldn't remember it.
And to get out to the country.
Ah.
So then they bought that place and built that house new,
Oh, I see, yeah.
you see. And I remember a man saying to her, Mary Ann, why did you build such a big house for just Martin?
Ah.
Oh, bless your heart, a big house. Sure, I'll have all the Cullens. And I'll have all the McCullens in their holidays, so the mains
That
must
was
get
right,
out
and
of
that's
the
the way
town.
she spoke to you, I remember.
So she brought them there on their
Ah,
holidays.
that's right.
And one she was very fond of was Father Jim
Ah.
Cullen.
Mhm.
And he was the most devilish one of the whole lot of them, mother.
I suppose he was.
He wasn't. He?
Ah.
You never went out, but he was into some
That's
trouble
yeah.
of some. And the funny thing, she would reprimanded them and come in to tell you about it, enjoying the things he did.
Ah.
She had a weakness for him.
But she retired and altogether died out at the courthouse.
And then whenever he died, she couldn't stay in that house.
That's
And she
right.
sold it and bought that little house opposite the courthouse.
Ah.
But her one longing was still for the Tomoney house. She
Ah.
would have walked up as far as the top of the fair hill to
Ah.
get living out of it.
And Mulholland's bought that was.
And Hans bought it.
Ah.
Keenan's bought it, remember. Yankee Keenan.
That's true. Oh, of course they lived in it. Ah.
He lived in it.
Well, now, before we finish with the Keenans, the connection with the Keenans and the Donnellys, there was a connection then too there. Maggie Keenan.
Maggie Keenan. Maggie
Mrs.
Keenan's
Hugh
sister.
Donnelly's wife was the sister of Maggie.
Yes, and Joe's wife was another sister.
Yes,
He married about nearly 60 years of age.
Joe Donnelly.
And Joe Donnelly and Rosie is about the same
Ah.
age. We're just very well suited.
But how are you connected now?
Well, Joe Donnelly was my uncle,
I
a
see.
brother of my mother's.
Mother,
She was Maggie Donnelly.
Dripperstown woman.
She was here, but she married Tomoney of Riverstown.
Oh, I see.
You see, they
Oh,
were,
I see, yeah.
you see.
Well, now, what the Timoneys also had a name too. You see, sometimes you go down around the graveyard here and you see tombstones which are indicative.
Yes,
They tell you the state of the party 100 years ago.
They
you
do.
see. And now there's not the name of these people, Harley. Now,
there's
you
not,
see,
there's
in a
not
way.
the name of them.
No. But there's Timoneys and Dripperstown. One and I were in Straw Graveyard. There. You hear
Yes.
people buried there, presume.
Yes, my father's buried there, my grandfather, my great-grandfather.
Ah.
Old James Donnelly.
But Trotty's brother just died last year.
I remember you telling me that.
August.
But your great grandfather Donnelly was talking
Donnelly.
about now. Was
His
it
grandfather
Dripperstown
Donnelly was
town?
William Donnelly, but great-grandfather Tomoney
Uh-huh.
was in Draperstown.
Ah.
That's as far back as I can go now.
Oh, of course.
Old Jamestown.
Ah.
And then he had a son.
What did they have? Did they have a business there too? Business
They had
people?
a business,
Ah.
and they bought it first when they came, real hair for making wigs,
Is that right?
and bought it at a guinea an ounce.
Yes.
And then the people in Draperstown used to talk after that.
Ah.
Funny thing about James Tomoney buying ladies' hair, and all his daughters had great heads of hair that they could sit on.
I know why.
Now
Well, they're still buying human hair, even in a bigger
I
way
know
than
again,
ever they were.
But at that time they used to go in greatly for wigs,
I know,
transformations.
yes, I know why.
Transformation. Your hair wasn't really got a wig in that.
No,
time.
and I remember seeing there was a kind of a puff that a woman put into the back of their hair
Yes,
to
I
stick the
remember.
pins in.
And put the thin hair.
And that was
over
made
it.
of human hair, wouldn't it have been?
Well,
that
no,
puffy
not
thing?
those puffies were. They were
No.
false. You
Were
see, the real hair was still very dear. And then you used to get, if the hair rolled round like this and only had very little, you go down to Belfast and buy a switch of hair.
Yes, well, they're
Yes.
using switches today
You
now
see,
too.
just about that.
Aye.
And then they put this in
Aye.
with their own wee bit of hair
Aye.
and put it on. But then these puffs that used to, well, I remember your Aunt Annie, Lord of Mercy, and we scared of school, which one of
Aye.
the nurse, and she wore them.
Oh, I've seen
And Nora
puffs.
Timney,
Aye.
they put their hair down here and they pinned these false pads and they combed it up. It raised their hair up the way their back combed it now, Mona.
I know.
Yeah.
But
You see.
switches are used now too,
Switches
false,
are used.
as a large plait.
That's what they're doing,
See.
they're using them. And
Well
still
then,
making wigs.
you're talking there just as we, in case we didn't come back to Timoneys.
Yes.
Now they Timoneys are no friend of your Timoneys, Nora Timoneys.
No, he was
Head Timoney.
he was a policeman and retired here, being head constable.
Yes,
They called him James Tomoney too.
yes.
But where he came from, I don't know.
Was he a northerner or a
No,
southerner?
he was a southerner. She
Like
was
it's not a
Belfast.
name you associate with the south.
It's Donegal, Tipperary.
It's Tipperary also.
It appears that a cousin in Belfast, research officer in Dublin, he was in the veterinary business,
Yeah.
and he'd say to them to come from Tipperary.
I would query that totally in a sense.
Tipperary,
It
and
could
there's
be that.
some of them in the west of Ireland,
Oh, it's more
and
likely
some
to
of
be
them
in the
in
west.
Donegal.
Well, I would query. Probably only some families went from Donegal to Tipperary. It's a northern name, a northern clan, definitely.
I think it was maybe Tomoney at first, Valley.
Well, there's
someone
Tomneys
told me.
around Coal Island,
Yes.
and there's Tomneys and Tomney at the Moy, Tomney. They're all corruptions of
You
Timoney.
see, now, as long as Uncle Frank was alive,
Aye.
he's dead in my memory. Well, the Riverstone people never said Frank Tim.
No,
They said Frank Tim.
Frank Tim.
Or they call him, they talk about father, they talk about Matt Tim.
Ah, well, that's only a term of
You see,
endearment.
and that was for years, they were just known as that.
Ah, well, I wouldn't mind. That's only
You see,
a.
just call,
That's
cut
only
it
in a
short.
friendly way, like
Yeah.
Da Doc, we used to call Lena's father.
Yes.
Da Doc. Doc, you see, they can shorten it. That doesn't mean a thing.
You see, Molly went to Riverstone. She served her time to be a milliner and was known as a Belfast.
Yeah.
And James Henry now, that would be
Yes,
Mary May's
yes,
connection. They had drapery, lots of money,
Ah,
and he thought of starting a millinery in Riverstone.
yes.
They had the drapery, and he asked a traveller
Uh-huh.
to get him
A milliner.
a good milliner to
Ah.
start the business,
I know.
and he would give her a good salary.
Mm,
So then this traveller knew Molly in Ireland, and he got her to go.
I see.
And she was the first and ever sold a bonnet or a hat in Riverstone.
Ah.
And she could make the hats.
Oh, they did.
You
They
know
made
where they
hats.
were.
See, they made hats and boats and everything.
And she was there with James Henry
Uh-huh.
until she got married.
Uh-huh. Well, James would be a relation of Sir Dennis Henry.
Oh, he'd be Sir Dennis's uncle.
Yes.
Sir Dennis's uncle or Sir Dennis's father. maybe.
Aye, he's Dennis Stanislaus Henry. That was his.
And
Dennis.
his,
And then there was another brother. What they called him on the tombstone? Dennis's brother. That's
the
the-
James, James has a nice big headstone up there at Straw Chapel.
Well,
Away
Dennis
from-
is a very small
Oh,
one,
it's sure they were disgusted. They were mad in Riverstone.
and it's badly kept, too.
No, look, it's just like everything you
I've
put
seen
up,
it. I
you know.
photographed it.
Oh, they were mad, the people at Riverstone.
Ah.
The wife
Well, that
doing
would be the widow that put
That
that
was
one
why
up.
the sea put it up there.
Uh-huh.
They used to come their summer holidays to Riverstone.
Oh, they still come because Mary Pat had a visit from Lady Henry, the younger Lady Henry,
Yes.
that summer passed.
See, the house there, as you go on the Tuppermore Road into Riverstone on the left-hand side,
Uh-huh.
and Dennis Henry owned that house, and he kept it for a summer residence for the children,
I know.
and the nursemaid with them, and the wife would come sometimes too.
Well, did
And
you
then-
spend more of your days as a girl in Dipperstown or
Oh,
here?
not at all. I left Riverstone when I was just 4. Come
See.
from Outerfeld, and I still came Outerfeld. Oh my,
I
far
know.
I have it.
But then there was just you and Winnie and your brother, was there?
Oh, not at all. There was Jim Father was married twice.
Yes.
His first wife was Malloy from Desert Martin, James Malloy's
I
sister.
see, well.
Well, he had 2 children. Jim, that man that died,
Uh-huh.
and another one, Mary, that went to America. Well, then there was John and Rose.
Of the first marriage.
No, of the second.
Aye,
Well, Uncle Frank Tomoney reared Jim and John and Rose,
yes,
and James Malloy took Mary,
I see.
and Mickey Keel took Matt and one in.
Your mother died young then? Your own
Died
mother?
young, and our first sickness, pneumonia,
Aye.
and she was dead, and Pa was dead, and say 6 weeks after.
Oh, I see. Very sad.
He was always given to have migraine heads,
I know why.
and after Mother died, he had this outside Riverstone with 3 miles band from, and that was a spare grocery too.
Yeah.
You see the bar and the grocery with it, and the
Is that
farm.
McCullers now, is it?
McConnell's.
Ah,
So he built that house
yeah.
and was getting married to Mother. So after he died, and then of course to have a good spree to himself.
Uh-huh.
And it appears he was the one that could never take drink.
Yeah.
And said if ever he was at a party with his 2 drinks, next morning he'd have been crazy with a head. And then he went in to Father Grant and took the pledge. And Father Grant says to him, don't cut it off now, Martha. He says, take a glass of whiskey tonight.
Wean yourself up.
And he says, take a glass tomorrow morning and another one at night. And he says to them, the third morning, take a half one this time. But he went home, and he just cut it off like that. Went into the DTs.
So the withdrawal of it was bad.
You see, just quit on top of the trouble. And just for 4 or 5 days in the DT, he developed pneumonia. And he...
6 weeks after your mother.
Less than 6 weeks. I'd say 6 weeks.
So that's the reason you were taken to be reared by these different
Sure, the
people.
different friends. See, the house was there, but there's nobody there to keep it.
Well, then you came to Marfelt then.
We came, Mickey Kilt, Mrs. Kilt was around, but it was Mickey.
Uh-huh.
It was really only by marriage.
I know.
After the same man says he wouldn't give her a piece to sleep at night. You couldn't get bed to sleep. And your sister's children with nobody to look after. So it was he came up.
Well, it Keats lived down there at where the Keats
Mrs.
was.
Haggerty lives.
Oh, Keats was there then.
That's where Mickey Kilt lived. And Jack lived down in Church Street.
I remember Jack.
But then they originally started up here, 2 of them. You know Conor Neal's?
Oh, I don't remember that in my time, though.
No, but you know where Connor's is. And you know the other where old Margaret McKee was.
Yes.
Old McKee lived in one, and his brother Neil Kilt lived in the other.
That's long before our time.
Oh, long, I don't remember.
No.
And then old Mick went to the Windmill Hill.
Which is up where?
Up Dunmoney, where Frank Kilt lived.
Oh, was that what they call Windman Hill? Off the Pine Road.
And then they were carters to Bert.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, that's right. I know.
Oh, I remember them carting there.
Well,
I
remember a very tall man, a Keat from the Windman Hill. Would it be Frank?
Joe. Frank's father.
That's right.
And he was married to a girl named McConbra.
That's right.
I think, I believe her father was a school inspector. And they lived round, between Roscarlin and Desert Martin. They lived there for years. And then they went to the public house in Riverstown. Ended up going to America.
I see. But the relatives that you had to America, do you have any contact with them?
Oh, do you have contact with his sister in America and the brother? Matt went out. He went out in 14.
Yeah.
The night before he went out, the home rule button was put in the statue book.
Yes, I know.
And the candles.
I remember candles and windows
I lighted up in the windows, so he went off the next morning. And Doris Mammy went with him.
Yes.
Too. Out to the sister.
She's Winifred.
That was out. She was Winifred. And they sent me my ticket. They asked me to go out. And I wouldn't thank them, but I had no intention of going to America. They changed my mind. So of course they paid no attention to that. And they just sent me on my ticket. And I came home from Whitehead on Wednesday. On Friday, big American envelope. One for Miss Kathleen Tinley, another for Miss Matthew Tinley. Tickets on them. Set sail. Saturday week. That was on Friday. Oh, I had no news in the evening. I was only 15 of going to America.
Yeah.
So I said, honey, you can hurry up the kettle with that. And she said, your sister said that it's no business, Emma. I wrote and thanked her. But said I wasn't going to America, and I am not going to America. For I don't believe those silly old yarns about all their mighty dollars. And they're coming home to wreck the Hesperus, Ireland, and do me my day. So of course one that was the home board, like, couldn't leave me on for night. She says, I'll go. So I used to call her Charlie Chaplin. I says, right you are, Charlie, just you go and you'll get rid of it. So Matt didn't want for me to go with him, you see. Rita, she'll start to cry and to start me. If you come with me, I said, no, it's all right for you, Matt, you're a boy. But I'll get what'll keep me in Ireland without going to marry. So he went with the intention of doing a few years, making a bit of money and coming home and into some business there. Then he was conscripted before he was too long out there.
Yeah, well.
And then Aunt died. So Matt never come home since.
See.
A man, hot Irishman, many times when the trouble was on, I thank God he was in Pittsburgh instead of Northern Ireland.
We're talking about Pittsburgh too. One of my Nichols was James was in Pittsburgh. Jim McNichol. Charlie.
Charlie.
He's dead now.
Oh, he's dead a good many years. He
He
had,
did well.
he had a very good business. It's
Some
Pittsburgh,
steel business.
big steel business, and he got promotion there,
Yes.
and he did very well.
Well, he was home once, wasn't he? on
Oh, he was
vacation?
home several times. Well, then when he retired, the slump came on,
I
and the
know.
steel business, all these big steel magnates
I know.
went down in the world. Well, then of course he was out of luck too at that time.
Well, Dr. Jim, as we used to call him, he was always well dressed.
Oh.
What did he do? How did he keep
The
himself
only thing
style?
I ever knew him doing was being a barman.
Yes, but he always looked the perfect.
And the tails,
Lord
and the beautiful
Fauntleroy,
big ring, and the nails beautifully done, and the hair, and lovely neat little feet, and dancing all the ladies in the town hall.
Oh,
Beautiful dance she was,
uh.
and got there. And
Oh,
took the
very
hat
dapper
and,
always.
Personal friend of ours, Joe Devlin, and Mr. Grant, a personal friend of ours, been up for supper last night.
Well, the Grants did have. There was again, even in the beginning of this century, there was a social class.
There was, but you know, Mrs. McNichol and my mother, Mrs. Roddy Swaite and my mother were first cousins.
Is that right?
Well,
There was a great. There was
there's
a.
a certain dignity about them.
There
and
was.
they carried that off. And Roddy McNichol could have passed himself far later.
Oh,
Any
he's.
company.
He could.
Roddy McNichol would have been a magistrate,
But
he couldn't sign his own name.
is that right?
And nobody in my profession knew that.
No, see, well, that's news to me too, because one wouldn't have got that impression. Roddy could have talked to the cows
Talked
come
well.
home.
And went out through the grassy markets
Yes.
and mixed with all the people, and definitely mixed down Mr. Grant and Toom and Mr. McClinton, the grassy
I know.
mixed with them too, and come right in, my dear. A wee game of poker with each crowd, but was watched who was in the game of poker. We just didn't bring everyone into their house.
No, it's true.
And did you know, you would have thought that really he was an educated man.
Well, I would have got that impression.
You would. Couldn't read his own name.
Well, then I saw in the Observer this week there was a football team of 1900 and Tommy John was in it. Tommy John,
Thomas John was in it.
He's a different type.
He was but then Thomas John sprung out an auctioneer one time, Father,
That's
you know. Was very good at it, but this thing here wasn't balanced at all.
the head.
And he had brains.
Yeah.
Oh, he had brains. And a memory. Oh, he was a great
Well, you have
reader.
good memory, Tony.
He had a great memory and a great reader. But just from ever, he went slumping the auctioneer. Seemed never to pick himself up again.
No.
He would go now to people's stock taking. You know,
Aye.
any shops, Logan's or Leslie's, he could do that sort of thing.
Could
And
he?
of course he had the grass seat during the grass seat.
That's
you
true.
know.
By the way, why did they ever call you Toti from here?
This Uncle Joe.
Yeah.
And when I was a child, the place was very dark. Some used to call me Darky, but he was up in Manfran anyhow. And there was some song, My Girl Totty.
It's
And
Toti,
he
not
used to
Toti.
lift me
Yeah.
and take me on his knee, you see, and sing this and then say, what are you, my girl, Tolly? Well, such a name. Someone called it Tolly. Drip says definitely Tolly. Mary Heady calls me Tolly. Someone calls Toti.
I said Toti, I know it's wrong, presumably.
A lot of people call him Toti. Well, then was lad when I was small, I just come in the bar and called me Dutzy. And I remember this man from Driverstown saying, now which of the Timneys are you? Well, I says, I couldn't really tell you what name you know my by. I said, it was Chris and Catherine or Kathleen. And I'm known as Totty, I'm known as Tootie, and I'm known as Dutzy. And there's one time I was called Darky. So whatever one you know that.
But you very seldom call your Christian name.
Oh, not at all. And not only by the aunt that I was reared with. And she never called me anything else. And she detested those names.
So would I if I was bearing
And she
it.
used to say, why do you answer them?
Well then, how did that name transfer itself to Toti O'Neill?
That was the first Tory I ever knew outside
And
myself.
how did the transference become
I
there?
don't know what that, or what her, or what she was baptised. Never knew
I
for
think
Tory was
she
baptised.
Margaret.
She could be Margaret.
I believe
Maybe
she
that
is.
was
Aye.
her. But I remember Anne, she always was hoping that Canon would someday was in the discover this pet name. He had a pet name.
I wouldn't like it.
But Canon came, I suppose he was so used to me. Didn't think it, and she just got impatient. Me. She says, Father, don't you think that's an awful name, she says, to call any girl? Tota. It's like what you'd call a dog. Oh, well, I don't know. He says, you know, he was very small for a long while. And maybe it suited her. Oh, she says, that's good. And school. Kathleen Timlin Road, with the nuns never called it. The name I'd only Totally Timlin.
Well,
Mary Welsh was the only one. But when I went to Whitehead, my aunt said, no means given that pet name.
no.
Well, it was known as Kathleen there,
Yeah.
Father. Well, when I came back again and heard this Toddy and Totty,
It upset you, I'm
oh,
sure.
I didn't. I thought it was awful funny. And there
Right.
was a Miss Dagwell, a captain's daughter in Whitehead, the third one, and she was called Totty.
Uh-huh.
And remember the boss shop that I was in, the station, been in and walked out again. And he says, she's a lovely girl. I don't know why they tackled that awful name to her, Tootie. It's like something you'd call a dog. I says, there's an awful name. Thinking to myself, I hope you never ate Matterfell to hear me call that. But I didn't tell
Well, of
them.
course, Tuddy is in term of endearment, a tuddy wee thing.
I
you see.
suppose that's
And
what
also
it
they
was.
say that.
You see, I suppose.
it's a term of, like a little D, instead of little D, it says tuddy little thing.
Yeah. Well, my aunt always, to the day she died, Kathleen, and Mary Welsh,
Ah.
well, his sister Mary.
Uh-huh.
But everyone else.
Well, the Welshes now, they came into being like, from Lacca direction.
Lacca.
They weren't such a big crowd till when did they? Was
It
through the posting
Willie
establishment?
Welsh's grandmother, but I don't know who she was.
Uh-huh.
She was a great woman, it appears.
Uh-huh.
Ran the hotel well, a great business head, and was charitable woman.
Ah,
Very charitable. Nobody would have known what it was to go hungry.
is that right?
If Mrs. Welsh knew about it. And not in a showy way, but in a nice quiet way.
I know.
And then a lot of commercial travellers stopped there at the time.
Mhm.
But she had her book
Uh-huh.
from October.
Uh-huh.
She put it down. You're earning a livelihood too in this time, put something down. For more unfortunate people that hasn't money needs blanket and coal.
Uh-huh.
She got all their names.
Uh,
And then got some other too to see the
Oh, I know,
was
aye.
collected to see.
that was the grandmother of her Welshes.
Grandmother. And now they were very well respected.
Yeah.
But then the disappointment came when James was a very nice fella, James Well, and when he married Harbison.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Oh, that's just too. You know,
But the
that's a good
Harbisons were a
connection.
big connection, too.
The Harbisons, the Welsh long fella. And that's why they were disappointed in Welsh marrying Harbison.
Uh-huh.
They had nothing on theirs, nonsense, and
Right.
snobbish. And they thought they'd bring this decent family, the Welshes, down. And all the old stuff, hated that.
Well,
And
they,
he was a very nice man. They came as weavers from, I think, Spelly-Riff.
aye, that's right, they're from the looks
You know the way they used to weave the linen?
I know, aye,
And
aye.
bringing in the webs
Aye.
to Candies. So they did that. And her old man Harbison got them in with some, that he would collect these webs and take a house in Macrofell.
Yeah.
Took a wee house up the pass and started, you know, a small place, few groceries in it.
Yes, yeah.
And they come in with their big webs, you know,
Aye,
under
aye.
their arm, and he took them, examined the weaving of it, and gave them the thread out with them again.
I know, aye.
But they had to buy all the groceries from him.
Was that now up where Johnny Minnie's would be, or where would that be?
Up
You wouldn't
there
know. Where the cinema is.
was that where McLean's is. A smaller place at that time.
I
There
see.
was 2 or 3 houses made into one for Harbison's.
Uh-huh.
Well then, they carried on with that. The people had to carry this home. They were glad to earn a bit of money, you know, the one in the house waving. That went on for a while anyhow. And then the next thing was one to spring out bigger. So then, bankrupt.
Uh-huh. Sometimes a good way to get on business, right enough.
Then after that, a large bought the property. Large, made it bigger.
Uh-huh.
But he had his ideas of getting there. Some of the rest of the Harbison had gone on. And then he wanted to make his sons professional,
Yes,
you
well.
see. And there was James, Claire's father, Lord Mercy, and John. And I think there was another one.
Was the Cookstown one
And
connection?
there was, well, they were cousins.
I see.
There was Lizzie, was married to James Walsh.
Yes.
And there was another one was married to Donaghy.
Uh-huh.
And there was another one married to a cousin of my own,
Yeah.
And Ribberstown, Timley McKenna.
Yeah.
So then they got that, but when they got again, they went past themselves. And they used to joke about them, the older people, about the hour old Harbisons, Master Wally, Master James, Master John. And they thought this was an awful joke. Well then James got married to this Miss Mullins from the Waterside in Derry.
Yeah.
And he went to this house to live. And John, was a mason, he studied for the law.
Yes.
And he bought this place, the Ribbish Company.
Out in the square here.
In the
Oh no, on the Broad Street.
Broad Street. He
Yeah.
wrote that. Well then, it was in the home place.
Yes.
And he married the crowd down there from Hillhead. Well then when it all ended up, finally, nobody money.
No, but they've got into professions just
They
the
got into
same.
professions and they got these homes.
Captain Harry was the son now of one of them.
His son, his sister of Claire's,
I know, Brother Clare's.
the brother Claire.
And he was in the medical ward.
He was qualified and joined the army.
Yes.
Great big fella he was.
Very ugly looking, God bless
Very
him.
ugly looking.
Aye.
So was Claire, God help her.
That's true. Daisy was very dainty.
Daisy was dainty. Daisy was more like a sister of her mother's.
Is that right? Aye.
She was a nice wee person. And the mother,
Aye.
the Sully's sister, were in Waterside in Derry,
Aye.
a public house there.
Yes.
A public house there.
Uh-huh.
They called her Sister McGuinness.
Yes.
And she was Mullen to her own name.
I know.
Claire's mother was Rose Mullen.
Yes.
Well then at that time that this circle and the family were brought up then to be educated and sent to music and sent to singing lessons
know.
and that little thing lasted for a while. And then you just had to come then to realise there's no money. There was a lot due in the bank. And that's just
How did they go down so? How did they go down so?
They were on bluff all the time, Father. They hadn't the money,
Were
they had
they?
credit.
Mm-hmm.
They had credit, that was why. They had the credit and they were working on it.
Oh, but then,
Even
but then,
James
and
there.
somewhere or other they must have had in their shop, if they were getting trade in the shop.
Oh, they had a big trade at the time.
well.
But then you see, fella, that trade, they were only starting to earn money with that.
And they were spending a
then-
lot on school fees, I suppose.
But there were an awful lot. Sure, Claire was sent away to Armagh, from Armagh to some more expensive school in Dublin.
Yes, I see.
And then he was sent away. Well then John was educated, that was
James'
the father
father.
again. James' father, he was educated, and you see, there wasn't money enough really to do that. We were
But
still,
then John
the
Harbison,
property we had, you see, we were getting in the bank on that.
I grant you,
Deeds
but John
or something.
Harbison must have made a good deal as a solicitor, for he was one of the few.
Well now father, that's a funny thing, and he married a real little lady, it appears, she was Miss Kelly,
Yes.
2 sisters of them,
Uh-huh.
and they were very wealthy,
Yes.
very refined ladylike people.
From Derry, no?
No, somewhere in Armagh.
Well,
And they came there, brought the little sister to live with them. Well, he got all her money, father.
yes.
And he had only the 2 children.
Uh-huh.
And he bought that place, and that place was never paid out.
That's right.
And that's why the bank sold it before James died.
And Joe Dorman bought it.
Yes, and it would have went into Protestant hands only for Father Joe Hughes.
Is that right?
James Harbison, Lord of Mercy, was laid up,
Aye.
and he wasn't likely to get better. Well, then was some man, Crawford, and Macarall wanted to buy
I
that.
know,
It was
aye.
a good building. He wanted to buy it, but then the thing was now to buy it before James died, the bank
I know,
pushed.
aye.
So there's a meeting of the heads in here, then the bank pushed. After these years, poor James Lord of Mercy couldn't meet it, he just
No.
couldn't meet it. So they were going to sell it, and all this was under currently, this man was to
I
buy it, so
know.
somebody told Father Joe. Father Joe tried all around, all the Catholics, and he went to Joe Dorman, Lord of Mercy. Just says, Father, I don't want property. Oh my God, he says, you want property, can you sell to give me Catholic?
Aye.
It has been Catholic hands, he says, and it says, well put under the house, he says, that there's stuff in the bank,
Yes.
and it'll make money. So Joe Dorman bought it.
Well, he was about the only one of that junker could have bought it, like. The poor Keenans
Well,
couldn't have bought it. So.
They couldn't have bought it. And none of, some of the others that had money wouldn't touch it. And Joe Dorman did buy it.
But that's so
Probably
much, that's
Joe
so
told
much
us
for the
himself.
Harbisons and the Walshes.
Uh-huh.
Where did the McMenamins come from?
McManamans, they originally came from Donegal.
Aye, so I was going to say
The
that.
board is near between Donegal and Derry,
Aye.
cattle dealers.
Oh, they started in the
Yeah.
cattle line.
And he came, the old man McManaman came and he married one of these Montagues or Montague crowd.
Is that right?
Nelson.
Aye.
And then bought that place down there. And then the son Joe got married to McGurk from Enniscarn.
Yes.
So now they're all the way too. And there's
There all go.
Francis and Jim. And Francis, God help him, was very ill present time.
Is that right?
Cancer throat.
Aye.
Of course, they're getting old too, you
Oh, aye.
know. Francis must be a good age.
Yeah.
And Jim was here in Gornish a few months ago and took a heart attack when he was there.
Yes.
So that's all that's left. Unless the nun. I would intend to ask
Is
Maliki.
she in Australia, isn't she?
Yes, Maliki called to see
Aye.
her.
Well, then Tommy McManamy was a very nice looking gentleman.
He was.
Very handsome.
Very handsome and a very nice man.
Aye, indeed.
A very nice man you can mean to get on with.
I know.
Didn't matter who you were or what you
I
were
know.
or what age
He
you were.
married Haggerty.
He married Heidi from Larne.
Larne.
Tom McManaman was a gentleman, one of nature's
Oh,
gentlemen.
he was. I remember that as a child. I could
You know,
remember
and
it.
there were this kind of a family amongst them. The family left and the mother died and the father reared them. But two of the McManamans never had wrong did you do or wrong did I do.
Aye.
They were very loyal to one another.
Yes.
Very, very
And
loyal.
Mrs. Killigo was a gentle lady.
She was. And sure that Jim, that brother,
Aye.
was taking her to Dublin to have her looked after.
Aye.
And so she go there, had our wee cases packed up, God help. Our hair painted all to go the next morning. And she took the Caesar that night.
Well, what does Jim do? What would he have done?
Jim was a captain in
Aye.
1418 war and was a veterinary surgeon.
I see.
And he went to Dublin and he remained in Dublin.
I see.
Still did. And then Francis, they used to call him Barney for a nickname.
Uh-huh.
He went on to medicine. He was in the Mater Hospital for a number of years.
In the matter of Belfast.
Met in Belfast. And then got married to some girl in the year, went to Dublin.
Uh-huh.
No children. They were both great bridge players.
Aye.
Both fine.
Well, now, sure, Tommy had no children either.
Tommy had no children.
That's right.
And Agnes had the one.
Aye, indeed.
And that died. Lovely child it was too.
Was it? Aye.
Well, then there was Mrs. McHenry.
Oh, I didn't.
Mrs. McHenry would have been Pally Moss at school.
That's right. She was
She
the
was
mother of
Lizzie.
Master McHenry.
She was. But she was a lovely person.
Lizzie seemed to be very popular.
Oh, that she
With-
was
with
a
her
lovely
contemporary
person.
women,
She
aye.
was. And she was, even to the end.
Aye.
They were living in the county down. She used to come up to visit Agnes, Mrs. Crilly, for a night or 3 weeks,
I know,
you know.
aye.
But she would really have enjoyed her fella, one of these warm-hearted, friendly type.
I know.
Oh, very entertaining she was.
Yeah.
So, of course, she's dead, an old man's dead.
Well-
He was a teacher too.
Oh, I see.
McHenry was a
Oh, he
teacher.
was. Well, then one of them is a nun, is she?
Yes.
And the other's Master McHenry down County
Down in
County Down.
County
somewhere.
Down. County Down.
You spoke there about Crilly. When did they come into the country?
Trillies came from Lisson
Aye, they would.
and
Aye.
Lisson and then to Cookstown.
Aye.
And on from Cookstown to Macclesfield.
Well, now, that's Tommy the tailor, would it be?
Yes.
And
But Tommy-
Johnny the teacher.
Johnny the teacher and Peter,
Aye.
who died in King Street.
Yes, I know.
But
Well,
their
what
father,
connection have they with tailoring? The two of them eventually were tailors.
well, the father wasn't a tailor. It was
No.
Tom started it. And
Where would
Tom
he have
went to
served his
tailor,
time?
but he went to Belfast.
I see.
Whether he went to serve his time or went to be what they call a finisher.
I think he's a better tailor than anybody
Oh,
around. I
he
bet
was definitely. Oh, he went
was a
and
real
served his
Aye.
time or finished his
Aye.
time, as they said,
Aye.
in a very first class
Oh, I
place
believe he
in
would have.
Belfast. And he was very, definitely very good.
Yes, so he was.
And Tom Crilly made money wherever it went.
That's true, he did indeed. And it
Fine.
couldn't have been all spent by a
Oh, bless
dissipated
my
son.
heart.
No.
And it wasn't followed now as if it was an extravagant household.
No, it wouldn't
They
have been.
hadn't a car.
No.
They had a girl to help. But they lived very, very
Frugally.
modestly.
They did.
Very, very
No, I
mo-
can't figure
There's
that
no
out.
such thing now as entertaining.
Aye.
Tom Crowley didn't like him.
No. And he wasn't a drunkard at all.
He wasn't a drunk. He might have went on a spree.
I know, but he
But
wasn't.
then that spree went over again.
It wasn't big party.
And as the guys, Mrs. Crowley and Lily Crew might
Aye.
went up with me. But that was only in for a wee chat.
I know.
And out for walk
There
again.
was no great
There
expense.
wasn't 3 times in
No.
the year, Father, that there'd be a cup of tea.
Mysterious.
And he was a funny man in this way. At the end of the roundabout. At the end of the roundabout,
Yeah.
they're loud enough that they could hear him up the stairs.
Yeah.
And yet, someday Elsie had to take my pants at her. Come on out for head's crack.
Yeah.
We
It
had
was a
some-
mystery that, just as
was
it was
just
a
that
mystery
peculiar type.
where Tom Larkin's money went.
Now that was another mystery.
A heck of a mystery. That.
Now, and that was a man, Lord of mercy,
He must have made an
that
enormous
had
money.
brains. And he did make money. He made money in the public house.
And
He
auctioneer.
made money in that ring that he had. And God bless us, sure was a great auctioneer round about.
His children must have spent money very foolishly.
Don't know what way it was now. And of course he thought there was nothing too good for the children.
That's
Now
true.
there was Madeline,
Mhm.
and he wouldn't affect anything. If it was £20 they wanted in those days, like when you
Come on,
20 shillings,
Aye.
that's been a lot of money.
Aye.
Well, that would have been nothing to Tommy Larkin.
That's true.
Said they'd been on condition, I hear them talking about slim, I think they said, oh, God bless us.
No, I was.
Shouldn't be thankful they're able to eat it, like me.
No,
and
I
all
was
the
up the one day there with up seeing a man called Patrick Tuchel up in Listen direction, and he said that he was reared by his grandmother up in Derry Gannard at Listen, but that he was born in the past.
Aye, that's right.
Now, which Patrick Tuchel is he?
His father would have been Peter Tuchel. If you remember.
Oh, brother
Peter
wee Frank's?
Yes.
Ah, I see.
And his married to Listen woman.
Aye.
That's why he was right up there.
Well, did this man's, did she die young?
She,
Because he was reared with a granny, he said.
she died and he remarried again, a woman from Riverstown, Derry Lloyd. Peter did.
Peter
And
Tuchel
he had no family.
well then, who was Jim Joe's father?
Jim Drew's father, now, whether there was some connection not very near, he was Jimmy Tuchel that worked with Keenan O'Mahony Guest.
Aye, but
Cattle dealer.
he must have been a brother. He must have like.
No, he was a brother of
Oh, Peter.
Harry Tuchel. Do you remember Harry that lived down Church Street? You used to call him the guinea hunter.
Was he a brother Harry's?
His brother
Ah.
Harry's.
Well, Jim, that Harry Tuchel, that's the one, Jim Joe's father.
Yes.
He was a tall man.
Jimmy
Jimmy Tuchel was a tall
tall
man.
man with a hat.
Aye,
Well back in his
Aye.
head. Very strict man.
Aye.
Good man. Very straight.
aye,
But like drink was tabooed.
yes,
Completely
yes.
with him. And God help her, Harry, he just loved to get it and got it too. And got through this
Yeah.
world, you see.
Well
Just
then, the guinea hunter, as we call him, he had one son, Jim Joe.
he died.
He died of TB today or
His
something.
heart,
Was it his
Heart.
heart?
he took rheumatic pills and then he
Well
took
then, we Frank.
his heart trouble from it.
Oh, no, no.
We friends, we friend Tuchel's mother and Peter Tuchel's mother was Donnelly,
There was some connection then again.
Felix Donnelly's sister. Should
Ah,
have been an aunt to Dr. Donnelly's Riverster.
that's that,
Anne Donnelly married this Johnny Tuchel. That
Ah,
time he was supposed to be what they called the leading butcher in Maccleville.
yes.
Yes, please.
Well then, Johnny Tuchel, where was
Johnny.
his butcher shop?
Down beside Paddy Farms. You know, one
Beside
of the wee
Paddy
second
Farm.
wee shop.
Oh yes, that's right.
And then they stole on the dime
Ah.
and then delivered with a pony and truck. Or delivered to
Well,
the...
we Frank used to go around with a basket.
He did, he
delivering.
delivered it for the brother,
I see.
Peter.
Ah,
The harmless wee soul was
he
Peter.
did, he was.
Very harmless.
Well then there was
Nice wee
another,
soul.
there was a man, Joe Tuchel, that we used to make fun of.
That was brother too. Joe just drank, and if anybody wanted to pawn anything, they looked for Joe and we'd run down to Campbell's pawn with that for me.
Do you remember the time they put Joe up to be a member of the council?
Oh, I think I do. Dressed him up.
They did, and he went round the town making speeches.
He didn't. All Joe cared about was just to get that drop drink. And that was only they done
And
anything for
well, can anybody tell me where the Blarney Rose's Crow was a song where Joe Tootle gets the blow?
Aye, that's right.
Yeah,
Oh, I can
same.
remember, Joe. Wonderful character, and yet the family never bothered reprimand them for that.
Well, now, what was there any sisters in anything of these?
There was one sister got married. She got married to a man, a policeman, a very nice man, the name of Carr.
Yeah,
Was here. He died young. Jack Carr's father.
is that right?
And his mother's too.
Yes, that's right.
And then there was another one, the girls got married to a man named Quinn from Drummoon.
I see.
And he had a sister nursed in the old infirmary. Night nurse.
Nurse
and
Tootle. No,
Nurse
Nurse
Quinn.
Quinn.
She did
Oh, I heard
night.
the name right now.
Your mother knew her,
Mhm.
father. And she, that would be Mary Conway. Annie Quinn got married to Conway. Mary Conway Station Road.
That was Mary, a friend of Charlie Conway.
No, they're different. Charlie Conway's bound a tree. Away down Derry direction.
Well then, he's the uncle of the hairdresser lady.
He's an uncle. A grandfather.
Yes, the grandfather.
No, thanks, no. He
But
was
they
a
were one of
grandfather.
day young then.
I suppose she'd be about 45, would she?
Oh, I'm speaking about
Charlie's
further back
wife.
Charlie's way.
Oh, Charlie's wife.
Because
she
Aunt
did.
Maggie Keenan was rearing somebody around there. That's brings you back in again.
She was Maggie King's sister's married to Charlie Conway.
Maggie Keenan's sister. And was Maggie Keenan's
Cassie.
another sister married to Donnelly then?
Yes.
And this is where I get
Two
this connection.
sisters.
Yes.
Two sisters married to Donny, one to Hugh and one to Joe, and one to Charlie Conway.
And Maggie didn't marry anyone.
And Maggie didn't marry anyone, and there was a sister, when Nicola America was married to one of the Cuttons out there.
Yes.
And there was a sister, when Nicola America, like Maggie, didn't marry and came home and ended their days with Maggie.
I see.
And then Cassie had a boy, Edward, he died in babyhood just. And then she just had the two girls, Isabel and Alice.
Well then, Jack Carr's father he'd be from some other part of Ireland. I
He
suppose.
was from some other part. A
He'd been a-
policeman, supposed to be a very good looking
He
fellow.
must have
very
been, but
nice
Jack
fellow,
was good looking.
very good looking. And she was a fine woman. And he died, there was nothing but her when he was going to work and raise Jack, and she was very good to Jack too. Then he went and joined the 1418.
Oh, sure, old Mrs. Carr, I remember. She was a very nice old woman. They'd be golf terrace, wasn't
She was, she lived with Jack in the
And
way
Mama
there.
used to know her.
She knew her well.
Today.
And her younger days she was a great singer,
Yes.
beautiful singer. We were inclined to be musical that.
Oh, very much. Jack was a
The
chorus player
family
over
are all
night.
musical too, and the band there.
Ah,
No.
sure they are.
And then there was another brother of them, a Peter Total, went to Stewartstown. Hugh Total.
You heard that name there.
Well, now his family did very well from him. I think he married twice.
Mhm.
And you remember Mrs. Mickey McKee, Cassie? She was a daughter of the first wife.
That's so. And the one that's married to Maggie Walsh's brother.
That's another one. Their mother was Malloy. And she died early. And then this Hugh Total married again. Somebody from Corner. Family did well, the son of them in Belfast. Sold a public house there, father.
Yeah.
Away near St Mary's, one of the oldest pubs in Belfast.
I see. Well,
3 years
then,
ago for £60,000.
oh, it would, sure. And there's a very dignified daughter of Jack Carr's in Flatley. She's a very ladylike girl.
She is, and a far nicer one went to England and got married.
Is that right? But she's a very ladylike girl. That.
Oh, this one is a lovely, her parents found tall and well carried, and a beautiful manner. A beautiful manner.
That girl's good manners too.
Very, very nice girl. She's
Her mother
married
was
to some-
Minnie.
She was Minnie, and God help her. She's been invalided for years and was able to come into chapel for a short time, but her legs were just out like that.
Is she Maggie
She's
Minnie?
Dublin.
Maggie Minnie.
Ah.
And then she was away in the hospital in Belfast a couple of times and home again.
But she was always intended to be state.
Always, but got just a burden fellow, not
Well, then a
ordinary.
sister of Maggie's married a policeman. Which was
She's
that?
dead.
Minnie.
Minnie.
Minnie, a nice wee girl she was. She died early too.
Tessie died.
And Tessie
And
did.
then
Well, that
Annie's
Tessie was
dead,
delicate
last
as far as I remember.
She was
Yeah.
always, I think she had drum trouble always. Nice child she was too. Well then Annie, she married me now, she's dead. So Millie's the only one left.
week. No, I think there's
And
another one.
Maggie.
There's still another one, is there not?
No.
Over.
And what about the boy, Jack Mooney, was it?
No, Eddie.
Eddie.
He's
Maggie,
dead.
he's dead, he got married to one of McKeever's Castle Lawson.
Uh-huh.
And she had two sons. I think there's a daughter too. But he died very early.
Well, then their father married twice also, married Miss Agnew the second wife.
He did, that's
Wow.
right. Mm. That was,
I'm sure that was arranged with Mrs. Smith when she was an arranger anyway.
and then P.J. Agnew arranged all the ones.
I'm sure that.
He did. I mean, Miss Smith's well arranged after though.
Never even saw Mrs. Smithsville or Lewis's.
I met it.
Do you remember?
Mrs. Mooney's.
I'm sure
You
that.
met them all. And after that, they showed two sons.
One didn't do very good either. Sure he didn't.
No, did he then?
We were talking there too about a tiller that used to be in Crillis called Leo Burke. Was there Burke?
Near Burke, it wasn't a tailor fella. He was a cousin of Mrs. McGurk's. And he came to do his shop
Cousin of Miss, from Kitty direction.
from Killy.
So then we
Leo
got
Burke.
accounts for it.
What was McGurk? Oh,
Jim
right.
Tinner's. Tinner's.
I was in
You were
McGurk's.
in McGurk.
I was in McGurk's
Yeah.
during the winter time and went about head in the summer fella.
Uh-huh.
And this time I made up my mind I'd go and stay summer in one time. So Peter Tom Crowley there sent for me to see would I go to him. The wife wasn't doing very well. Keep the books in the shop and to keep the stock. And all that's what I said, no, I agreed to go to Whitehead. Always said it wasn't written. I said, no, that is verbal, but what have I under my word? I said, I agreed to go at Easter, and I said, I'm not going to knock them out now. So then I told Mrs. McGurk about this. She said she had a cousin, you know, would do a great job for him. And I said, you speak to Tom Crowley. Sure, the good man gets his clothes made with him. So then this young fellow's brought there. He was a great man in the area.
Ah, but he wasn't, therefore he wasn't a tailor's assistant.
No, he wasn't, he was in
Although
the
there's
shop.
a tradition of tailoring in Kitty, you see.
It
It
could
used
have
to be
been.
a town of tailors.
Darkley, Mrs.
Darkley, from Darkley.
Darkley, Kitty. She was
So
an
actually that's how he
assistant
came around.
So that's how he came around. Nice boy he was.
He was.
Used to jump out of that gym total, Lord of Mercy, and Johnny O'Neill.
Ah,
He used to go about and go to the dances
I
together.
know.
And then he was a real Irish man
I know.
whenever the trouble started. And I think that's how he met his death about.
It was. So he didn't actually come as a tailor, he came as a clerk.
A clerk and shop assistant.
I see.
He took down the measurements.
I know. Oh, they
Kept
must
the
have some
accounts.
experience of tailoring because
Kept
all
the
these people.
accounts and kept the stock in order.
Mhm.
A very nice boy he was, a good boy too.
Yeah. So that's it. Well, at any rate, I know he's from Kid Darkley and she's from Darkley too.
She was.
And that's what, that, no thank you, Mona, unless you're just going to waste.
I love a cup of tea, Mona.
It's there, it's more tea for today.
No, I like that, that's lovely.
Well, this is it anyhow. Tell me about now we have that sorted out. Tell me about Dalrymple's ghost.
Who?
The Pine Road, the ghost of the Pine Road.
They laugh about the ghost
I
and
like
Pine.
that, thank
They
you.
laugh about the ghost and Pine Road, but there's no such thing, but the ghost was there.
Was it Dalrymple they called it?
He was tall and black
Mm-hmm.
and stately.
Uh-huh.
Oh, like that.
Did you ever see it?
I did. Not likely to forget it. But
Oh,
I
really?
went the Pound Road at any hour of the night, fella. We knew you going out to kids, you know, when we were young.
You would, of course, to the Windmill Hill.
And you know Big Pat Keenan, it's called him Proctor.
Proctor Keenan,
Well, Proctor's mother was killed, you see.
aye.
And she was on this night with me and anyhow, and she was in the country and she wouldn't go outside the door at night unless the husband or the son was with her.
Uh-huh.
So she came in the kills and stayed on. Young Pat was to call for her. Young Pat didn't call. And whatever happened that night, there was 3 cows and 3 horses in case the whole 3 of them were out. Jarvis and Owen. So it went on, man thought, well, they'll be in, they'll soon be in, but it went on to was 12 o'clock and hadn't come in. She was getting uneasy. So I said to man, the thing was very young at the time. I said, I'll go out with Jane and Anne. That'll be all right, child, she says. But how are you going to get in again? I wouldn't have you coming in there at night. By yourself, for young Pat mightn't be at home. So this old man, Hutchison, that lives next door to us, he was out in Kirkney, living next door to the public house. And he was sitting and drinking on the stoop. And he says, well, Mrs. Keel, I'll go out with Tony, be back in with her. Oh, of course, such a thing as being afraid, like, it never dawned on me, father. Because I'm round the Pound Road, and she got between us, you see, because she was afraid. And she was linked to George, and she was linked on me. Well, he just came like, father, that's near that.
Yeah, but where near McLeod's house was it?
Yes, exactly, just before you went to that house. That stopped us. And Jane had bad eyesight, Lord mercy, was a good thing for her that night. And here, just slowly they started later. And they went over. And I says to George Hutchison, who is that?
Aye.
And George pulled back, so just up to this. Say, come on, George, somebody playing a trick or two, you match it.
Aye.
You know, I thought to myself, you're just frightening us.
Aye.
George had a big old-fashioned box of matches and got up in the bits and struck the matches. And onto the field, there was nothing. But you talk about the sweat pouring of George and poured of me too. And then we couldn't tell this woman that was with us, in case she would collapse on the road with it. So we went up as far as the house, along the Pound Road, and the husband was there. And we went in with her, and passed the through. George, you're not well. So I know indeed he isn't. I said, I got afraid. He says, sit down, you to take a cup of tea. No, George says. He says, well, you take them go on. Says I, he's seen a gentleman down there, I says, at the cottage. Says I, both of us, and your wife Jane didn't see it, and we told her nothing about it. Oh, see, he still appears.
Well, now, what's the tradition before he got to appear?
Well,
What was the tradition about that?
Like that man appeared from that house, from the time of the whatever connection of Salters or Turkish company lived in it.
Oh, there was some, well,
And
There's a
who was
history
house?
to there.
that's McLeod's house.
No, not McLeod's house.
The wee house at the bridge.
No, the Millbrook.
Oh, Millbrook,
That's
aye.
where you're supposed to
Aye.
walk from. And then when they were rebuilding it, men were supposed to come on a bottle, and they broke the pit and pick, and this was supposed to be here, the shot of this for fire now. But whether that was true or not, but I know anyhow, Jackman walked right in front of us. And George Hutchison would not come home that way that night again.
I see.
Not to see.
Well,
Pat.
did
She
others,
was sit here till morning.
was there a tradition at that time about a
There
ghost
was.
on that Pound
And
Road?
it was supposed to be that it would have appeared. It was going to be anything from 12 to 2. But I'd read that in long dark nights and never thought a thing of it. And I could hear the story, but was thinking, you know, somebody would come.
Well, that's where the present common is now.
Go
Oh, no, McLaughlin's
No.
house.
From
That's
her,
Higgins.
Deborah Higgins'
Higgins'
house.
house, aye.
That's where it was.
Well, then there's supposed to have been even a ghost there the time after McGuckin's death.
Molly Higgins wouldn't sleep in it the night, and they let him sleep in the night. They had it blessed and had mass said on it.
Oh, well, probably that he would have done that without being any ghost in it at all. Because they thought Earl Robert was a hard-eyed solicitor, of course.
Was, and there was a man there before, and Glover, a solicitor, had a very good name, Sanderson.
Yes.
But it was some crowd, this English crowd before that fellow.
Oh, I see.
It was before Glover and before McGuckin,
Uh-huh.
whatever it was.
Well, is there any other tradition of ghosts around? Do you remember Margaret's grave?
What did it do?
There's no ghost tradition in that.
There was harvest was up there for Claire's.
Claire's, well, what was that ghost tradition?
It was supposed to be our father who would have mentioned that.
Claire's father, he fell down the stairs, did he?
He got dead.
Oh, did he?
And he did. Now I'll tell you, father, this is no story.
Have another
This,
biscuit or
no, I have one
two.
here. This something I make a killed after the Carton Belfast stopped. Started they dealing potatoes and pork.
Yes.
And he knew James harvesting well, and James says to him, Mickey, will you let me go in with you with the pork? You see, both deal together. Mickey knew more about the dealing than James did. So Mrs. Keel wasn't too keen on this.
Yeah.
She wanted him on his own and not in business at all. That was all very well. Mickey was up every evening, James harvesting. An office in the backyard, no. Mickey come that night. Well, oh, James invested for him. Things doing rightly. So of course, they went to bed and there was some visitors in Keels. And Mrs. Keel had to leave her bed there and go up to that room, one of that rooms. And the girl, 70 times from Draperstown, was in the other bed. But anyhow, I was meant to woke up with this head and you know, Mrs. Keel, there's a man over me in the bed.
Yeah.
She says, Sarah, you're having a nightmare. She hung up and blessed herself. As that, he appeared at her bed.
The man.
James Harrison. Now that was told before she nearly died.
I see.
And she says, Sarah, have you your beads with you? Call on the holy name of Jesus and pray for James Harrison. And as she said that, he left her and went back to Sarah. And he kept doing that for nearly an hour. And then said she prayed and called on the name of Jesus, he left her bed. But he came back again. But she says she had not the power to go down the stairs. But anyhow, when disappeared, she says, Sarah, come on over, child, and sleep in my bed with me. She was in hysterics.
So would I.
So she didn't say to Sarah, that's James Harvison. You see, third man, maybe snake made child, but she had seen him. But don't make his great man for raising in the morning. Some man used to say, rattling buckets to wake in the neighbours 5 o'clock in the morning. He came up the street, of course. He used to say to see him in the chimneys with smoke out of. And he came down. He all kills very excited. Opens the door and comes down the stairs. Marianne. What he wanted this early morning, she says. Do you know who's dead? Do you know who's dead? Oh, I do. I know who's dead. David Vice man, you're not out of your bed yet. Who is it? Says my James Harvison. And he took up them stairs, 2 at a time. And the front door open. But when he come down the stairs, he get to see the up and come down with him. He had run up the street to see down the road early morning. Light was all up in Harvison's. And he told me they during the night.
But he died a natural death.
Then and after death, and Mrs. Harbison, and everyone polluted to get him to sleep with her. Until a priest put an end to that, that's no lie.
Sure, John Neil was on it and he prayed and was going to choke you.
Oh, is that right, isn't it?
Yeah. He was a shop boy in McLaren's.
And
Quigley's.
Quigley's.
Was it not up the pass?
he was a shop there, but Quigley's had Bellis in the shop there too. And they had the trouble. And these other boys, Joe Neil and them, you see, laughed at them. Oh, there was nothing there. They says, just come here some night and stay with us. The shopping, you know. Oh, they were very brave, but they weren't so brave, but they didn't leave till 8 o'clock the next morning. They heard it.
You said Quigley's had ghostly trouble, had they?
No, it
Quigley's
was
had the shop.
the shop, and they could hear him. Running down the stairs and rattling the keys in his pocket.
Should have barricaded them too. Savage in there.
This is news to me now.
Oh,
I didn't
Mum,
hear this
you
ever
heard it.
again before.
Oh,
Now,
John Neil, if you
she
read
got
it again.
the girl in the house one day at night. And Miss Clare's mother went and asked all the woman she'd pay the mail for staying the night. Never after the first night would they stay. And there was this old lady, very old lady, Shane Fullerton, from Blackhead.
Yeah.
She was barracks woman. So Mrs. Harbison came to me and she says, Mrs. Gill, do you know Jane Fullerton? Oh, indeed, I know Jane. She says, Jane's a good soul. I wonder, she says, could you persuade her to stay with me at night? And she says, I'll tell her. And I'll ask her, and I'll explain the true situation to her, Mrs. Harbison. There's no use of bringing them in and getting them frightened, explain all, but she says she would hold of her faith, Jane. See Astains in the charity. Another bed on her Mrs. Harvest. And Jane went with her pint bottle of holy water. And a crucifix. So now Mrs. Harvest and you'll be all right, and we use plenty of holy water and we'll be all right, and we'll pray away and get in the event. She got the worst, but she got out of it too. Mrs. Harvest and praying around the corridor and rattling the keys away. The priest had a habit of rattling keys in his pocket, you know, many keys. And that's what they're doing. Jane got up and she got up. And they locked the door and they sprinkled holy water and they prayed and ejaculated to clear daylight in the morning. And Jane followed and said she thought a pity for her. But she says, my head would go. She says, it must kill me without some priest to see what he can do.
Yeah.
And Anne says, wasn't she told that before? And whatever it is, she says, if she couldn't confide in a priest about it, who could she confide in? So they know, and then they all had to stay there till they got the priest. Never have mute on it since.
I wonder what priest would have done that then, the exorcism.
I don't know who it was now.
Now,
Because it must have been Canon Donnelly's time.
I see.
But who was the priest that did it, I don't know.
Well, it's because the Harvest has a great connection with Redemptorist priests. The same Redemptorist. You know, there was a head man in Dundalk of the Redemptorist order was a Father Harvest.
Yes.
I wonder he didn't come to do something for them. It was the same connection.
The same connection, but you see, she was mum, I suppose they were leaving her more or less on the road after that fella.
Could be.
After Jane
Well, then what
died,
is the connection, relationship between Tom Harvest and them, the MP?
Well, Tom Harvison,
They were cousins, you said.
they would be cousins, fella, it would be
Well,
seven cousins.
they had a big business in Cookstown.
They're out of business now, fella.
Yeah, but it was a famous business.
They had a big business and a good business, and he got married, she was a lady doctor,
Yeah.
Scotch lady. She carried on the business for her, and one of the daughters helped her with the books and Patrick McSween there. So then she was tired and sold it and was living up in Loy Hill.
I see.
Because the woman had no need of it, fella.
Oh no.
But then there's still a brother there, one that wasn't very strong. Do you know him, Mona? Tom Harbison's brother.
Really, no.
Is he not dead?
No, he's not. Funny thing, just asked about him last time or something things. He's still there and living with Mrs. Harbison. Like wasn't 100% fella, you know.
I see.
Like he was, there wasn't there anything that any need to be afraid of him and anything, but he couldn't learn. He's just something wrong mentally with him.
Well, now that's enough about that and ghost. Tell me about the day that you and Winnie went out to see Willie Donnelly. It was in October 1922.
Dodo was just a baby
Because,
fella. Dodo was just a
Maybe
baby.
because-
One day more tea.
No thanks.
Because what do I see now? What
She was just 6 weeks old, fella, about.
All right, I'll give you the date. I can give you the date.
God bless her, that was terrible acting.
Eh?
Well, he killed one.
Sure.
A big soft woolly been over in that
Oh,
bush.
sure, it'll be page 20, page 22, right? Page 20 and page 22. I was telling you if you remember the case.
You didn't especially join me.
Oh, I know you did. Page 20. See what date it says now. These are the copies of Willie's cards to Alice and Mimi. August the 30th.
23:25.
August 19 and 24.
Aye.
I did not know W. Tomoney was married. He said that on the 30th of
Yes.
August. Well then, on October the 4th, you both of you went down. October the 4th. I think it's October, what do I say?
Was that September?
Page 22, October the 4th. Dear Alice, I got your letter and hope you got my last card. Who do you think came to the show the other day but Torry and Winnie Tomoney. The wind was strong at the time and they were hard to hear.
So
When
we
I-
went over in the wee boat from Larne Harbour over to Elmagee,
Yes,
and then we flop our hands as best we could.
you cup your hands to make the noise.
And some fella came up and we asked to see Billy Donnelly, and then Billy was brought up, and then he brought Larkin up, too,
Up to the deck of the ship.
up to the deck of the ship. But we were a good bit off the ship.
Oh
you
no,
know.
we just couldn't be heard at all.
Well, we could hear them. They had some kind of a
Megaphone.
megaphone business, and we
They'd had
had.
a guardboard or something.
And he wanted. I think he was shocked. I was carrying a load of young clothes on me, you know.
Well,
And he says, "Tally, who's that baby?" Oh, I says, "It's done me carried to you. This is what she's married."
well,
I says, "There, we to take this baby, not a me disgrace thinking." I says,
because he didn't know when he was married, you see, by a couple of months before that. He said, I didn't know Winifred was married. Oh, I see.
Oh, that is a wild place for them to be. I don't know how many was down there. One, of course, she cried.
No wonder.
Oh, nothing. Oh, God help.
There's about 300 of them.
Oh, and she says we can't give them nothing. So
No.
not at all you can do. But Alice went. Oh, father's a pity you didn't meet Alice. Lord of mercy.
Oh, Alice, he wrote to Alice and she wrote to everybody and sent parcels
You
to
know, father,
everybody.
that she was more raised than everybody was on.
I suppose she was.
She was, and she spent thousands on the fathers.
On what?
On the father's money, thousands on it.
I couldn't be a bit surprised because she was
He
sending
was made
parcels to
living with his
everybody.
leg. And
Ah.
he was doing from 11 to 12 pieces in a week.
Ah.
Around the sea. A Protestant man was seeing this thing enough and told him.
Uh-huh.
It was passed at the Orange Laws, passed at the Freemason House.
Ah.
But none of them were going into families. And his business was big Protestant trade.
I know,
Gunning Moore and their dairies and all this.
I know.
All the mill owners. And he kept his politics to himself.
Mhm.
As he said when he voted, he couldn't even tell his own wife if she couldn't give him a shot.
Yes.
And they were having the time of their life out in Reeves every night, Alice was, and he was up in bed.
Uh-huh.
So the B-men arrived at Loyal. Of the mother, she was delighted with us. She was getting a great thrill out of it. B-men arrived, and what is she in the hall door? A cleaver to cut the heads of the mother.
They're more, Mammy's more was what name?
Keenan.
I see.
And she had the door open. Remember, you ever seen the wee chains that used to be
That's
in
right,
these
they had them with many
She
eyes.
was on the chains. She saw the B-men. She must call them for murders and blood men and letting blood money. And if they put their foot inside her door, she looked like, I'll cut the head of every one of you. Uncle Hugh up in bed sleeping, knew nothing at all about this. And they were opposite the barracks.
I know.
They said they had their duty to do. One day their duty in her house. A distant policeman comes. He can do it. So they went over for the head. The head and her are very great. Well, she let the head on. So he said it was very awkward for him. It's none of his doings, and he's so much respect for Mr. Donnelly and the whole family. But she'd have to let him go. I'd be proud of him, she should he die on the road, lad. But he's not going to them bloody herdings, she says. So, sit down, Billy, she, and I'll make you a good feed. I'll grill you steak before you go, and Head, you'll have a good supper with him. This was about 1 o'clock in the morning. So of course both of them, of course the Head was very nice about me at the supper. So took Billy away, told the fellow nothing about it. And the next day at dinner time he said, where was Billy? He didn't come in to see me this morning. Oh, he's in a hurry, he slept down. So it went the second morning. He says, it's time I know where this boy is. So of course she made some excuse about the police. So this man, a big farmer from outside Cookstown, came in that evening and asked to see Uncle Hugh and told Uncle Hugh the whole thing. And he says, this is passed to the Lords now. And I for one said, as long as you're alive, that I would get my meat of you. And there's some other ones the same. But he says, we're threatened. And for God's sake, he says, if you have to come down on crutches, will you get out of that bed and come and sit in the shop? And if you do that, we'll all stick to it. I know nothing about this, nor I didn't know he was on a boat or what is this boat anyhow. So he went down again. Well, he nearly died. The money was all gone.
Oh, it
And they
was.
were down, fella, to sell one beast in a week.
I'm sure of that.
from 11 to 12 and we were down to cell 1. So he got behind the counter again, he pulled it up. So then he came back again. Well then he got a pension, father.
Oh, that wouldn't be very much. He was taken away in late June. He was arrested in June 22. And he wouldn't sign any forms to get out. He wouldn't give in. He was about the last let out.
Well, sure, the mother then, she was on her deathbed. And the altar earlier. And every one of them come to Laos to let her mother sign for him.
No.
To get him out to see her. And I said she'd let him rot in the book before she signed the rubbish. And didn't let him out.
No, he wouldn't
wouldn't
sign
sign
the form
it
for parole.
She wouldn't let him
No.
sign it. And I can remember the other day she said, away into the bedroom, took me in with her till she wrote in the greatest letter. I prayed the mother was off and I prayed she was off. And I heard say, God, God, it's all right for you living in low hell, having all you want, but that way got in the books, not having all
No, he wasn't suffering because he was there for his rights. He was rights
And
for
do you know
his
what she did? She went out in the boat and got on the agenda. She could have been arrested.
Well, she got on with permission. She wouldn't.
No, she didn't get permission.
She couldn't get aboard a boat.
And the guard come on her.
But
And kicked up a great row. But they got her off quietly after she had all she had to say and the parcels given to her. She didn't even.
No, I think that's an exaggeration there. Because none of these things would he have ever said anything like that. And these didn't all come through the censor. He got some of them sent home with people. I'm afraid she didn't do anything like that.
Oh, sure.
You can tell Louis there, I don't want any protection from him or anyone else in Cookstown.
And that's the day's man.
There's a sample of it.
They were all going to see, could they use their influence in any way, you see. And as they went, Alison salted the ball.
Oh, well, surely she would. But she really sent, 3 times every week she sent parcels to him or to others.
She did, and she sent away to the organisation.
Oh, she must have spent a fortune.
Oh, she's thousands, fella.
Yeah, indeed.
Thousands.
And as Mimi says, they would hardly support them in the shop now.
Well, do you know there's one crowd that she couldn't buy before she died was the Larkins? Oh, she couldn't buy the Larkins. She said there was the whole lot of them. There's nothing
And
in
they
them.
wouldn't support them now.
They wouldn't support them. They did one of them ever go to see him in the hospital.
I suppose that's true indeed.
Not one of that crowd. Remember the time the father died, there was some fella came up from Belfast that was in the boat with him. I don't remember his name. He came up to the funeral and all.
Well, then he was studying and all there.
And he was great for Irish language.
Oh, well, he studied Irish language.
And Irish history. It was crazy.
Yeah.
No, I don't think she offers tea.
She suggests tea to people.
Did not change her name.
But Doris is strange.
Daughter was Mary Josephine. And then someone thought, oh, Mary Balls. Just one. Curly Joey is like a wee boy anyhow. With the result, she got Joey.
Joey.
And Johnny O'Neill and this crowd boys used to come in the mall and play the wee shop in Railway Street. And they made a great fuss of her. And trying to talk to her to make her say, Joey, and she said, do.
Oh, I see.
With the result that they used to come in and say, do. And Riverstown. Father is Richard Welch. Father Dick, did you know?
Yeah, Richard Welch,
And he drops town.
So it would be,
And Mary's such a nice name. Well, I says now, some of them still call her Joey, but in Riverstown, they wouldn't call her Joey. See, that down his first. So even Joey, and Mary. So Annie Joseph McGee said, I think, Father, we could try Joey. Try this. Well, you know, for the priest said, Annie Joseph McGee, do a thing. It was like Martin's sin not to do it. Well, she tried hard. At the end of the month, we could get up and just because she says, every one of us go back to the daughter again. And then she got wee daughter was in school, she got Joey, you see, down here. But it was a silly name.
Well, it was a Malik, you just say that, we were talking about it. He says probably it was the way she pronounced her name herself at the beginning of life.
And you know, Charlie Neal, Johnny's brother, was her godfather.
Yeah.
And no one made a fuss about her and used to carry her way up the street around the houses. And what's your name? She said, Do.
Ah.
Do.
Very good.
So that's how it stuck to her.
That's how it started.
But she made sure none of her own got.
Now we have got
names.
how she got named, and we got how you got named.
Oh, my
And
God.
they're horrible names. the
They're
both of them.
horrible names, Hans used to say, and she would insist, always called me Kathleen
Ah.
and Mary Welsh.
And now,
Called me Kathleen.
if I had known you were Kathleen.
And
never would've been
everybody
so.
else in the town, and the worst of it was nearly killed me aunt. The nuns called me Tori.
Wow.
Reading out the rule book and
Ah.
Kathleen written on it, and they called Tori. Which couldn't just reprimand the nuns, must she like. And says one day, I just start when Canquin comes in the next time to talk about these pet names and nicknames. So of course he started. He said they were terrible names of word flowers or something. And
Joe Watson.
Paddy Loudon. He went up with Paddy to take the pledge.
Yeah.
So was young to play. This wasn't as bad as the pledge himself. But Miss Loudon was given off, and then they told, we'll now give him a chance. And then they take the pledge now for 3 months.
Ah.
So up they went to Canon John, Rosie McGuigan, housekeeper.
Yes.
Canon Rosie. No, he's just round about, but he'll soon be in. Come on in. Of course, Rosie sees her down the barrel. Playboys get a chat out of them. So the Canon came in and the boys got up. Just having a wee walk round, Canon Joe says to him. And he says, it's just sending Johnny Drunkle away there.
Yes.
And says, so where do you send him, Canon?
Ah.
We're just away there, by Blackwater. Well, I think the 2 boys couldn't get down the Canons Avenue quick enough for thinking of Johnny the
Oh, I see.
Drunkle. I know that time the trees were just
Not
reading
over his
I
avenue.
know, but I'm telling you, it left us all afraid of going up. In case we'd meet him.
This was the same Dalrymple.
This Johnny Drunkle was getting married to a widow woman, Catholic, named Mrs. O'Neill. Have you ever heard of a Paddy O'Neill? Lives down Batoon. Used to deal in pigs, they call him, nicknamed Paddy Slaver.
That's right.
Slabber.
Paddy Slaver.
Ah.
He's a son of ours. And I think they actually did get married. But he went to the convent for instructions. But then never really became a Catholic. And he used to slip round up the school there, St. Joseph's, you know.
Yes.
And going back with the convent. Nobody would arrest after they had a dick hadn't gone down that path at night. Not even Rosie McGuigan.
Was he supposed to haunt it
He was
then?
supposed to walk there. Well, Joe said the canon, he says, like he wasn't joking. He says he was in a very serious man. And says, he can't really descend to the Blackwater. Oh, she says, better there, with his hand like that. Joe
They
says,
didn't think much of the quarter.
He didn't, I wondered. Joe says, why descend to the Blackwater?
Well,
But
he-
he says, really, the canon was very serious. When he came in again, he said he looked like a man that was
Frightened.
praying very serious and earnestly. And he says there's no joking about it, but he said, I'm trying to change the subject very quickly.
But they didn't see this ghost.
No,
was it?
they didn't. It was supposed to be in that dark path.
Well, it's one of those dark paths you would associate with a
You
ghost
see,
anyway.
it's behind the St. Ruthan's graveyard.
Yes, I
that
know.
path
It
along
would,
the back of it.
It would.
And I suppose this idea, maybe it could talk and there might have been something in it, but you don't know. Father, did you ever hear of a knocking on anything?
Of who?
A knocking at night on anything?
Oh, I've heard that. I've heard things like
Well,
that.
do you know I had that knocking, Father?
Did you? Where?
I did indeed. It followed me from I left Rennie Street to Draperstown. Now this is no joke.
Ah,
And it came back with me again to Church Street.
yes.
And it never knocked from Joe Wall State, Father. I just didn't tell that open.
What species did it take? What is the form of knocking?
You would go at night and everything would be lit, the shop closed, and the window still, in the little room,
A proper knock?
a proper knock. And it didn't frighten me, Father.
No.
And up the stairs, when you went up the stairs, just in the dressing table,
Many knocks were there.
it just went on knocking her 3 times, cease and knock again. And I had a girl stopping with me, Mary Karen. Oh, she was quaking with fear. And she said this night down in the kitchen, what's the knocking? I said, I don't know, what's the knocking? It's not at the door anyhow. Then she marched it up the stairs, I said, say a prayer for the Holy Souls.
Uh-huh.
It'll go away. But it continued. But it wasn't frightening. And that girl continued on staring at me. And say, there's the knock. And I said, go on. Say the prayer for the Holy Souls. So I told Father Welsh about it.
Yes. And Draperstown.
And Draperstown. But I said, when it was after, when he died, when I went to Belfast to stop him in a Protestant house, I never came there.
See?
Never once came there. But it came to Draperstown. And it came to Church Street. And it did the same in the kitchen, in the roll out, the nine chair, and the same up the stairs. Don't you all say never heard the knock?
Well, did your sister Winifred go dressed to hear
Winifred.
it? She heard it?
No, she was dead.
Oh, she
was
died
dead
before
Joe.
Joe.
So I told Father Welsh and I tried to tell about it. I said, Father, now, I'm not frightened of it.
Uh-huh.
Whatever it is, it's not frightening me. But I said, Mary Carnes up in the house, she can tell you about it. And I said, Liz McLaughlin has got it. And none of us has been frightened. But I said, it won't come until I have the door closed. There's only come with these and tell them about the Protestant house. So I told him about going up the stairs. Then he told me a story about a priest, a curate lived in this house, and the house was furnished, you see, the parish. And he died suddenly, and this other priest went to it. And he said, he used to sit down there, there was this picture, and you could see this finger always
Beckoning.
beckoning to him. And he said he moved his chair, but something was always compelling him to look round again. So he said, when this going up, and I thought, well, I'll go and take that picture down. He says he went and he took the picture down, and the back of the picture
Mass is not
for a
said.
mass, And he said, when he investigated, what he found, priests got up for masses.
And hadn't said the.
He put them behind this picture in the paper.
Ah.
And he said the only thing he could think was, priests thought that was mass he hadn't lived to say, but he said the mass, took the paper down, was never a finger again.
Well, that's a common story told. Like it's throughout the whole length and breadth of Ireland. He didn't specify that it took place in Draperstown.
No, it was Father Dick told her.
Yes, it's one's told, probably founded on fact.
But I said, would he say then a mass for one night? He says, no, she's all right. He says, maybe she wants to keep in touch with your works.
I see.
And funny thing, it never came after that. Not even the night that Joe was dead in Belfast and we didn't know he was dead.
He died suddenly in Belfast.
He died suddenly, he had blood pressure, Father.
Yes.
And he got a lump here on the back of his neck.
Like a carbuncle lump.
No way, but it didn't go down. It says for small hen egg. And they always wore the soft collars. And didn't annoy him, but you know, appearances or anything was annoying him. God forgive us, anything like a new suit. And the girls were all talking about how well Joe looked in the chapel. Says, I told them they could say, you're not great, you're only for the lump in the back of your neck. You see, and Joe came in and he stood up and said, oh, Joe's spoke about that lump in the back of your neck. Just teasing him. So he showed us to some doctor in Maharaj, and he showed us to a doctor in Belfast.
Yeah.
Oh, it would never do him any harm, he wouldn't touch that. He showed us to Dr. Keekley. Dr. Keekley told him to come up to the infirmary.
Yeah.
This morning at 10 o'clock. And he would take it out. So up Joe went anyhow. Took it out and Joe come home. And when he was home, the father went to make him a cup of tea. I said, Joe just fainted right out with him. So sent for Keekley, he didn't want to the infirmary. He was up for about a week. And I often wondered, should that have been touched? It was really hard.
No, I say
pain
it
with
was no harm. It's what they call a carbuncle, and they can remove these things.
Like a big egg.
I know.
But you could have touched
Sisters
it,
were.
but it didn't move with you. You know,
No, I know,
there's
it's
some
a
of
hard
these
one.
Hard one.
Ah.
Well, then he had very high blood pressure.
Yes.
So Dr. Keekley said at the time, he says, she'll snap like that someday.
I know.
Where, I don't know. Could be Dublin, could be Maharaj Dipson. That's how it's going to go.
They did.
He says, I never met any high blood pressure. And then he had malaria
Yeah.
and dysentery, you see. And he used to take that. Well, then there for 6 weeks before he died, he wasn't well. He wasn't sick, but it was all his head. and he refused to go out of the Cunning Sprinkler.
Yeah.
He said his head was too late, it wouldn't let him.
Ah.
And this evening is over my place, and I said, not go out again, so. He says, I cannot. And he says, you know, my dad thinks unless you have a bad stomach, it's not wrong.
Well, he had a bad stomach all his days.
And he says, well, you know, bad stomach, there's nothing wrong with it. And being the giggly, take things easy. Do you know, he says, I couldn't get up to the Springchurch now
Ah.
with my head. He says, it's just like that, he gets drums beating all the
Ah, it's
time.
blood pressure.
And then he started to ask people, say a prayer for me. See, everybody I say a prayer for me. They laugh at me.
Ah.
And it had been there, he hadn't been out, couldn't go out. And had that fear on him of going out anywhere. Not even coming out of the house. And on the, you were there to confession the first Thursday, always did 9 Fridays. And on Sunday, after he came from that, he felt great. And he was delighted with himself. And he says to the father, well, please God, I'll get all out in the spring car tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the father says, you need more fruit on. Well, it's just good for fast then. He says, and get it on. Oh, man, it's great. Feel well again. And he came over all delighted. And then started to sing through the kitchen. I don't know what or something. See, mind I was very bad. He says, I was even afraid going up the stairs. When I looked at the top of the stairs, he says, me that was through the whole of 1418 war.
Yeah.
And got up. Roddy came, saw Roddy. Roddy's going to Belfast. Said he would give Joe the lift down to Belfast and up again. And he came over and it wasn't great for him, Joe. Roddy says, joking and teasing all the way. Roddy's customers stop at Antrim Chapel, you know, Gwen.
Yeah.
And the both of them went in. And came out again, made a winning, Lord may I say, promise. And he'd never go to Belfast without first going to St. Mary's and
Yes.
making a visit
Ah.
before he would go to the market and keep up the first Fridays. And he went into St. Mary's and met 3 Riverstown boys coming out.
Ah.
And they had seen him coming out of Antrim.
Yeah.
They says, Joe, you're praying hard today.
Ah.
Last we saw you was coming out of Antrim, now you're coming out of St. Mary's. So we started and told him about this was a promise he had made, wasn't he?
Ah.
He still carried. Went on to the market yard and gave the man a cheque that he had to take his money out of
I
his
know.
stuff. And as he was talking to him, the man then, he says, here's some of your clients come. The man looked at him enough change. He says, wait a minute, Joe. This client has money to give me and I'll give you the change of your cheque. He walked out of the market into the next street, Lagan Street. And it just seemed to catch him there. And he's seen walking up and down the street and going over to houses and hitting his head against them.
Oh, ah.
Even his hat was dinged there. And he had done this, they noticed him doing this and wondered why he was doing it. And this house, they had big Sacred Heart picture. The woman, she said, that's what attracted him into it. They were nearly into the house, got the house consecrated and the door was open. And he walked in there, now was a Peter Campbell. He walked in there and sat down and started to talk to a little boy. So Mrs. Campbell's mother came in and he wondered what was the man doing. They couldn't make out what he was saying, why.
No.
Talking to the boy. So the husband came in. She says, this is a man has walked in here. So he spoke to him. He says, he's a decent looking man. Been down maybe in the market or something. Make him a cup of tea. And she had the kettle on, the teapot in her hand like that, to pour the water on. When he got up, and she showed how Joe O'Loughlin stood up, you know, like his shoulders, straighten his shoulders.
Yes.
And she says he got up like that and straightened his shoulders and says, I have a little girl of my own at home. And I has to buy her a bicycle today. And I say his problem just fell down the floor.
And died.
And she says there was blood came from the nose and from the ears. And she says they left him put in the chair and rang for the doctor. And put his hand in his pocket, his rosary beads and medals, and said ring for the priest. And they got the priest and got the doctor and got him removed. He never spoke again.
Where did he die?
in the city hospital.
Silly off.
The city hospital.
Oh,
So then Corny went to see, he was in Belfast, and he went to see what was it there. So they said it was cerebral hemorrhage, and had very high blood pressure.
and so the knocking stopped.
The knocking stopped, fella, now is the truth. And whatever
Well, there
you
wasn't-
think that continuing, fella, that it would have got on your nerves.
I know. Was there any tree near your home
No,
where a branch could be hitting a window?
no.
Sometimes that happens.
There was a big long yard to the house in Draperstown, and after that a garden.
Uh-huh.
You see, well, there's houses away at that. Now, and there are two places.
It was in the one room all the time, or one on the one window sill
No,
all
it
the
was, no, when I came to Church Street,
time.
it came back there.
I know, but it do stay
And
at the
then
same
when I
place.
went up the stairs, it came up the stairs, and always to the dressing table. Like,
There wasn't any creaking furniture in the rest
no,
of the house.
none. Yeah, in neither houses.
We'll accept
You
there
know,
was
like
something.
even I went and examined it all. And I thought, Mary Karen, I said, Mary, that is an awful like I thought to myself, better I don't know what it is. Say a prayer for the Holy Spirit. She used to say, but it's a distinct knock. It's a distinct knock. How it should come to both places. They gave him to Church Street. And the night he died, it didn't come. You see, it was the next day before we got
No, of course.
They didn't know who he was, you see.
No.
Because he didn't get back.
To the
And then
markets.
when inquiry was done, when out of the market yard, Mr. Wilson says, Joe Walsh, a healthy looking man. He was here and didn't come back to me again when he come back for his receipt and his change.
Well, he never was wounded or shell shocked in the war or anything.
No, just the dysentery and high blood
Was
pressure.
in the Far East, was in the Middle East in the war or so.
No,
was
he
in
was in
France,
France a lot.
Not usually get malaria in France.
It's, now where else he was, I don't know. He had malaria definitely. And you could see it in his body when it was coming out, like all the kind of rings fella. And he got all feverish.
Oh, that's the sign. I don't know about the
You
rings
see,
part.
and then the dysentery, you see. Well, then when he had that, he had to stay in the house because he couldn't
Because I remember,
come out anywhere.
I remember bringing a note of humour into this psychic conversation.
Yes.
Sam McCormick, do you remember saying, he's bidding me well goodbye, I met her or something. Goodbye, Miss Kane. He says, she says, where you go? I'm going to Mesopotamia.
Yes.
That was a long way away from
He
the
was
town.
in the war from 1914.
Yes,
It was 1919 when he was discharged.
demobilised.
And that war was over now, too. But there was one thing he would never tell you anything about. The dreadful parts of it. Now, that he didn't want to discuss, but the funny things in it,
Sure of that.
he would have discussed them. He wrote Canon Corn a letter asking for prayers when he was there, and telling who he had met, Jim McMenamin and someone else from Felt and all this sort of thing. And then the canon sent a letter to the Ulster Mail, that was Cookster. They have it printed in the Ulster Mail.
Why, you see, the canon was wanting people to join the British Army. He
Yes, and still remained a great friend of Joseph Cannon. Oh, there was never a week but he come down to him.
How did he join the army in the first place?
Or just their army, and the boys are all going and
I know,
I'm going too.
aye.
You see, it never took time to think.
I say so, yeah.
Just in the war wasn't right started.
Was he an only boy?
Oh, an only boy.
And I'm sure his father and mother didn't welcome with the idea of
God,
joining
his
an
mother,
army.
dear, she thought it was not like hers,
I
some
know.
show. And she used to say, you know, he must have killed. He's the best way that was ever there in the town. Now, Joe's a man big now, and I never had to do that on him.
I know.
And, you know, she still had that notion. But Joe Walls, no matter what the mom was like, never went out in the morning without kissing Mother, and the same thing at night.
I
And
see.
she really worshipped him. And then the father would scold it.
I know.
You see,
He was a very good singer.
a good singer. He was very hearty and cheery. And he was very agreeable in his own home, father.
Was he?
He was. You could have forgiven him for the drop of drink.
Yes, I know.
Because he was considerate in his own home and very thoughtful. As long as Winnie and I'd be all right, sure. If he's sitting in an armchair, he'd hopped up the minute any of us went in, sit down there or do anything for you. or the slightest little thing new in the house, soon as you go, oh, only daughter, where did you get that? That's a lovely wee picture. Oh, one of them's lovely cushions. Noticed all these things, appreciated it all. But it was very, very agreeable in the home. Very agreeable.
The same wasn't true of Aunt Jane and Joe, that the
No,
story you were telling us about. Tell them that. I was trying to tell them that.
These she was supposed to be a very good looking girl, you know, very catchy, but I think hadn't too much of an upbringing. And Joe was brought up to think he was a gentleman. The people had money at the time. But however, he fell in love with Aunt Jane.
Her maiden name was?
Aunt Jane
McKeown, aye.
And of course he married her, which people thought was terrible. But took her up to the home anyhow. And Aunt Jane after it just broke off in her own wee way, and when she wanted the spree, she had the spree. And put Joe about the rightabouts and put the whole street about the rightabouts when she felt like it. Then that would go over again. She was a good housekeeper outside that. But somebody's talking to Joe anyhow about him. Oh, he says, now Joe, you had to marry her, you needn't say anything about her. He says, oh, she's kind of right, he says. But he says, she's not cultured.
She's not cultured.
Oh, you know, Aunt Jane has no table manners, whatever. So Joe was what they considered at a very safe age, not looking through his eyes at all. Joe met a young lady in Korea,
He was a traveller, was
a
he?
traveller for wine.
Joe was a traveller for
Joe
wine.
was a traveller for
Very
wine.
dangerous occupation with it now
And
and
he
yet.
fell in love with this girl anyhow, and she fell in love with him. Well, to me at that time, the Joe was, he'd have considered
old
an
man.
old man, hunched up the shoulders and all.
But very cultured, was he?
Oh, very cultured. But then the girl got married with him. A young Betty Boyce.
Yes, she said
Or
I
Hattie
worked in the
Boyce.
post office, did she?
She worked in the post office, and a very respectable people. But didn't they think this Nelly did gentleman and didn't know he was married?
Yes.
And he took her off to marry her. Somebody told Aunt Jane, you see.
But we did because they were former marriage, or they just...
Unless they went through a register.
I know, well-
But there's no priest.
No, naturally, it'd be a bigamy if he did.
Yes, well, nobody could ever have any proof of that.
Oh, well, then there was no charge of bigamy.
No.
No.
And here, Aunt Jane went then to watch the boats go. To see if we go to Belfast. Joe wasn't seen, so somebody said, making inquiries. Oh, tactful enough when she came to do things like that. Joe was away, but it was before she had ever come to Belfast to look about him. She said, you'll come back again. The hardest job Joe ever did was travelling, so America called when he went out at first for a bit of hard work.
Yes.
They came back again and arrived with 4 people in Coleraine, or a short distance outside Coleraine. But now, Mrs. McCann was plainly full all along. They stopped talking about it. But wasn't she making inquiries everywhere? She found out Joe and Hattie were back again, or coming back.
Yes.
So, of course, she dressed up in her very best and could have looked a very fine looking woman who was dressed, and took the daughter with her little girl. And went to Mrs. Boyce's. Said, she opened the door and spoke to her. It was pretty early in the morning. Are you Mrs. Boyce? She said, yes. Well, she said, my maiden name was McKenna. And I've come to make inquiries here about my brother. Oh, she says, Joseph McCann. And
She
said,
told the lady,
"Oh,
she said her maiden name, huh?
yes, shook hands with you, come right in. Come right in. And then, what is your married name? I don't remember that name, but she gave nothing in anyhow. And she said, we've all been so worried about him. Mother and all, mother's a very old woman. And from we went to America, he's never written to us. Well, she went, we introduced photographs taken in America, and they were on their way home. And she must certainly come down and see them, and she would tell Joe when he arrived. But come you down anyhow, now welcome should be. And of course, gave her a cup of tea, then asked her to stay for dinner, and lunch attended, seen her off on the train again. But Aunt Jane was waiting if she came back to Marfell. Did she mute that anyhow?
No.
Like she wasn't a fool that way. Tracing them all, and she would never give the name of who was tracing them for. She
Is that
never
right?
told that.
Ah.
She traced them to a ticket a room in Belfast. She went there anyhow and knocked the door. Mr. and Mrs. McKenna. Didn't take more with her that day. And he says, yes, she just walked to see them. Well, she says, I'll call him. Oh, not at all. She says, my boy, you're all right. She's just a member of the family. And up she went which door. She went in and she described Joe lying on top of the bedspread with his head like that in his hands. And Hetty doing a small bit of sewing.
Yes.
And he said, my God. He says, Anne Jane, my God, the lot I must have Joe Hetty left and I finished using this room. And I know she took him. She blackened his whole eye and blackened his face. And when she was tired beating him, and she wouldn't let the woman out of the room, she banged his head and face up against the brass pole of the bed. And then he jumped and then she called Hetty. Well, now this is God's truth. She had a bunch of her hair. And on her hands back to show matter of fact proof. Lovely fair hair, man. You must be careful. Don't show me that. That's made me sick.
That's what your aunt said.
Oh, she did. Oh, she says, after all, the woman was to blame. Didn't he deceive that girl? Young girl like that. Liked of Hetty as much as sister not want to see me again. And they both flew
Naturally.
out of the room. And Aunt Jane just ransacked the room and come out of the house with the woman's fur coat on. Oh. And she got a lovely piece of silk. Aunt Jane just folded this up and put it on the fur coat as a scarf. She come down to our house after it with it. Stuck all on the way and everything else, cleared away. And then they cleared away from there. But they went back again after Glenalla. She found where they were too. And they wouldn't let her in, and she broke the windows in the house. And at last they had let her in. They were afraid the police come and getting her in. Joe said he'd pay the damage, but they had let her in. So that was them.
Did she repeat the beaten performance again?
She did. She did indeed. Which was a terrible big
And they disappeared
big,
then?
strong one. So they disappeared wasn't long after that date. Joe was dead. And she seemed there after she'd done that, as if she was quite satisfied.
Well, I dare say.
You know, there was no more talk about Joe and Hetty after.
Well, if Miss Boyce has anything else, she would clear from Joe then, or.
Well, that's, you see, that's the pressure that did happen, you see,
Ah.
that she left him there. But the girl was deceived right enough. But I didn't
She was,
she
she didn't know he was married. She didn't know
She
he
didn't
was
know he was
married.
married, nor her mother didn't know.
No, because she.
And there was the difference in age, but I suppose this an old gentleman and very nice and very kind to Hetty. They thought everything was all right. But this was poor Hetty.
Now, where did Joe eventually die? I
In
wonder.
hospital in Belfast.
Oh, did he? Was it long after
Right,
that, I
I-
wonder?
Not very long after it.
He predeceased her, he was dead before her.
Oh, he was dead before Angie.
He never returned to Macrofell.
Never did. Never did. And wherever he used to be, like even when they were coming along all right, Angie and him together, he used to often come with the train, whether he went over to England or Scotland, get off the boat, but he'd come with the train on Sunday morning, and Mary used to go down to meet him.
Ah, well, it would be that if he crossed over Saturday night, of course.
That must have been that, because Mary used to always go down to meet the fellow. So that was.
Well, Aunt Jane was a big, hefty woman, all
Oh,
right.
she was.
And Joe was a.
You
She
know, there
could
was
give him a good beating.
the windows, stained glass windows over the high altar.
Yeah.
They were
They were
donated.
donated by his father.
They were wealthy people, these
Very
McKenna.
wealthy people.
Where did McKeown, Aunt Jane McKeown, come from?
They came out from, they didn't know where, from
Oh, I
Montefiore,
see.
and settled away at the end of the pass.
I see.
And there was Anne Jane and another, said a quiet little girl, Maggie McKeown, and she got married to old Pat Hagen.
Oh,
Remember
yes, yes, I do.
And they said she was as quiet as Anne Jane was.
Was rough.
either. And I'll tell you who that woman was a widow. And she married Jim Tuchel's grandfather. Have you ever heard of him, Timothy Tuchel?
Timony Tuchel.
Uh-huh.
No, I didn't hear of Timony Tuchel.
Or your father.
Jim Joe Tuchel's grandfather.
Jim Tuchel's grandfather. And this was big straight woman. Anne Jane must have looked like her.
Uh-huh.
She had a little shop up the pass.
Uh-huh.
And I can remember going into it one night, going to the circus with Uncle Mickey, you see, to get sweets. up in the past. And she was sitting just the full size of a chair behind the counter. That's Aunt Jane's mother. And she married this Timothy too.
By the way, you spoke about going to the circus. Where was the circuses in those days?
This circus was up the Moneymore Road, about where the Technical is.
Near the beech trees that were there
That's right.
originally.
You see, it was the greatest thing to get during the day, but it was far better to get at night.
Of course, yeah.
And then you wouldn't get during the day unless Uncle Mickey was in it.
I know.
And then stiffness wouldn't let me ask Miss Keith, could I go to the circus?
Ah.
So I went up and Uncle Mickey and we go to the circus. Oh, we are, daughter. I'll take you by the hand, of course, and then you got sweets and everything else you see you wanted for the circus. And
What
then
did
you went with him.
What did Aunt Jane say to Mrs. John Johnson about and took her to law?
Mrs. John, as you know, she fell out her husband, was marrying a man she didn't want at all. She was engaged in another fella, T.R. McLean, a solicitor, and she had all her linens and all ready,
Yeah,
and the name McLean on them.
is that right?
Oh, that's the truth.
And
She
how-
took some of them to Belfast with her. And then when she used to fall out with this man, he was a very decent people, you know.
Big
But oh,
businessman.
there was a kink in her. Seeing her on the street, man, you'd have thought she was the most ladylike person you ever met. And speaking to her,
Oh, yes.
very gracious and very nice, but terrible temper. And had to abuse somebody. Like, and the rest of the family were ashamed of her. Well, this
She
T.R.
called her
McLean,
husband old, but
Bulljack.
Bulljock.
And this McLaren was a nice looking fella. Well, he discovered the temper and was going to get married to her. But he said no. He made as well take a breach of promise or anything and go through it as married that one because she was mad. And then he gave her up. See? And then this John Johnson went along.
John was very, very well.
Oh,
very
very,
wealthy then.
very Alec Johnson's people.
Uh-huh.
They owned an awful lot of money, and his mother was Montgomery from Ballymena,
Yeah.
coach building crowd,
Yeah.
a real lady, you know. She married an anyhow, they had the breakfast at home in the cottage. And John, of course, like Angie, just wasn't trouble about table man. But anyhow, in the evening, and he put the knife up his mouth
Yeah.
at the wedding reception. She left her knife come across his wrist.
I had him in the right.
Well, Molly and Mary Jane and the rest of them, Bob Wright, nearly died.
Uh-huh.
Like, no, Bob Wright told that himself again.
Yes.
Says, you know, you could do nothing with her. Says, she threw my mother down the stairs once and broke her arm, Mrs. Keith, you know. We never wanted that to get out on. And I don't know how John Johnson, how to get on, and he's a rate critter. And it's been, but he said, if she doesn't wear them sometime, we'll all be lucky. You see. So, she did get married, but anything just did when she took that time to start around. And then I threw up the stairs and pulled down the window. Police barracks was practically opposite, you know.
It was around
And then
now.
she said, oh, but Jack, you're lying on McLaren seat. His name's on him yet. You're lying on McLaren's belly. Well, then, of course, all meetings was carried out. You was looking to hear what was being said. He never retaliated. This time she got a new carpet. Oh, great taste for the house. And then she decided she'd get this linen that was worn in the houses over the carpet, you see.
On the stairs, like.
To save the carpet, as the bathroom at the top of the stairs. So she engaged Willie Hutchison to put down the linen for her. Willie put it down. He was very particular, and he was watching himself very well. He had finished and examined the job well, and then went and knocked the door. Miss Johnson, Miss Johnson, this little job finished good. You just have a look and see if it's all right, please you. So I went up to the top of the stairs, down again. Yes, Willie, it's a very nice job. Just as she said that, she called him when Jacques came out of the shop. And he went to go up to the bathroom. And of course, that was Mark in the linen. Just a minute, she says. Bull Jack should be in the mitten. She went and she just got the carpet, and I brought carpet and all.
The whole length up.
The whole end up. Well, Willie Hutchison came out of the house without being paid.
And temper.
John Womanley says would have cut my throat. He says you wouldn't have seen the man more than. And
It
she
was
said,
on the linen.
what had she the linen for? Only to let them use the carpet. He said, no, man, says, never mind. John will pay sometime, lass. I'm never going near her, no matter what job she wants done, I'm never going near it.
Was it her own husband who wanted to go up the stairs?
Yes,
Yes,
and he
and-
put his foot on and she let him and didn't tell him to come down. Just one. And another time, he bought her a beautiful fur coat. And he was sitting taking his supper in the kitchen. And he fell out with some, she knocked his station with the fur coat and lifted the top, not the rings, lifted the top and put the fur coat down and kept poking it with a poker.
And burned it.
She was a
Now that woman died didn't want. She definitely
She did.
didn't want.
And so when the husband was on a drink bench, she opened all the taps and the casks and the
She
bar.
did, and the Spartan
she must have been mental.
No, I saw that whiskey and rum and on and down. You know,
The street
Marcus,
gutter.
Chris McGurk's on a Friday morning when all the meat travellers are coming.
Well, what happened to him?
Well, then then the man bankrupt, you see. She had to have a governess for her girls. She wouldn't send to Presbyterian school to mix with the riff-raff of Macrafell. She got the governess. And the house all decorated, fitted up. A study for him and all the rest of it. Well, then came to that. Was doing these actions, she'd him broke. Then the money was all done.
Poor husband.
It was a pity film. And he was, like, I've never heard anyone complain of poor John John.
No, that's right. All learned.
No matter when he was in company, never seemed to offend anybody. So then they had to clear out. The house was going to be sold.
Tom Doherty bought the house. It's where Tom Doherty's shop
Oh,
is.
it's a lovely
Yes.
house. Well, her brothers got her house in Belfast, near Queen's University. Nice big house it was, laid out in front of Lisburn Road. And the side of it was university. And you know it?
Yes.
They got that, and then she got students to stop with her. And the daughter, Daphne, helped her with cooking, cleaning up. A very wise girl she was. Then poor John had nothing. And he was living there. But John daren't go by the whole door. He had to go round this avenue and go into the back door. And he just seemed to come out and walk up and down, sometimes go over to the park and still the pipe in the mouth. And sometimes not even a reek coming out of the pipe. Funny kind of a pipe he always smoked.
Uh-huh.
And I used to visit a friend that I had up there. And she said to me about this old gentleman, where he lived. And she says, Kathleen, he comes from Africa. He's a very nice old man. Because often when I'm out with Malcolm, he stops and talks. But she said, it's very cruel to me. Don't go by the front door. So I looked out of the her window, and I said, come here, Peggy. Is that the man? That's some gentleman I'm speaking about, Kathleen. Would you like to go in to speak to him? And I said, no. I thought to myself,
Oh.
do you know, he might have felt it.
Right.
He would have felt very
I would have
embarrassed.
hurt
He would.
him by going out to speak to him in the circumstances. So before she left here, they hadn't their food even the very gas was cut out of the house.
Uh-huh.
And sitting with a candle in the lemonade bottle.
I'm sure
So
that.
was awful funny to escape in that.
Tell
Often
us
I used
that.
to see it, we laughed. Often I used to see us run to laugh at. God knows what the
Mrs.
thing.
Brown sitting in,
And Mrs. Johnson.
sitting in
And
great
reading
state
about
still.
some cousin of theirs in Belfast, Hogue.
Yes.
At one time with a big drapery there where the castle buildings are.
Yes.
And some honours they got. And Joe says, sitting glorying in that.
And
He
they,
says, and the lemonade bottle and the candle. And did ever Lizzie Brown think that would happen to her? So we were laughing, like thinking we saw her so nice for helping us. It struck me as funny picture. Oh, Joe said, oh God, don't laugh. It's very few people do. He was sorry to see it.
and they were reduced to that. And
They were
yet she was
reduced to
still
that.
living in this feeling of greatness.
And greatness. And then this Aunt Jane McKenna lived next door to you know. And Aunt Jane was red-haired herself. And her daughter was red-haired. So she had nothing else to shoot for Jack this night. She put him out and then she had the three upstairs window to go and rear his bee
The
next door
red
to Aunt Jane. Aunt Jane was standing in the door of the rest of the room. She could hear them. By so-and-so Lizzie Brown, I'll make your name dirt. For mine's not dirt. And she says, who wants your ball, Jack? It was a bill that he married you. I gave you trouble over this. It ended up in Derry.
And they say at the
And the
24th.
worst of it was she had two brothers solicitors. Very decent men, one of them, Jimmy Brown, do you remember
That's
him,
right.
Father Louis? That lived in Broad, a very nice wee man. Another one, Sam, married and had a family in Mahara.
Uh-huh.
Those three brothers had to be in the court to hear all the said.
Uh-huh.
Brought from Mahara to Derry. And the judge addressed Anne saying, "Is my lady?"
Yes.
And when he addressed Mrs. Johnson, said, "You woman, you woman." And this was all in print afterwards. And he asked her, did she call this lady's child that? And she said, I wouldn't use expression to a dog. He says, "You woman, it's not a use to a dog, but a human being." But she lost the case anyhow. I remember Jim and the brother were in a terrible state. They say it brought it under all their fellow solicitors,
Oh, I know.
counsellors and everything there, you know. What you say? I don't know for up enough.
Well,
These
the
people-
Johns. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry,
Go on. Well,
Are these people still living in Belfast?
No, no.
that's
That
not
woman
all
is
like-
dead and he's dead. The daughter's alive.
The daughters?
Away in Portland, Owen. She
Daphne.
got married. No, oh, the Johnsons. Daphne's alive and there's two boys.
Ian and
They were both at the university. I don't know what they qualified. Two lovely looking boys.
One's
were
married, one of them down about 40 died.
I don't think they ever qualified.
Did they not? You were at the Queen's because I used to see them coming up and going under the door. They only kind of changed.
Maybe one was an accountant.
An accountant.
They were already shared, weren't they?
And one of us Reddy's another fair.
Didn't
They
Daphne
were
go to one of these poor schools in England?
She did.
Merton College or something?
Yes, she did indeed.
See, they were fabulous.
And do you know
lyrics.
what she had? She had the children, when it was tea time. She called the father, go and call old Bull Jack in for his tea. And they would open the doors from the hall in the shop. Bull Jack,
Ah.
tea's ready.
Old Colin.
No father. Do you not remember his mother ever? Valerie?
No.
Very nice, really like.
They're from Edby Ballyboughan, were they?
No, his mother was Montgomery from Ballymena. They were great.
John's was.
John's mother was,
Right.
a big family. Very, very nice family.
Ah.
These Montgomerys were what they called coach builders.
I know, you saw it.
You
often
see
in the name.
sidecars and coaches.
Ah.
But if your car or coach was a Montgomery,
Aye, but
it was the best to see.
I know.
They were the best. She was one of that crowd. Oh, definitely a nice woman. Do you remember the brother James?
The solicitor.
Uh-huh.
Oh, he was a gentleman too.
He was a gentleman. He lived in Draper's.
Well, did he ever marry?
He married twice too.
Because he always been very placid.
Very classy and very nice.
Oh, yes.
The first, forget, Ogilvy or something. My father was a foreigner.
Uh-huh.
I think they were in London business in Belfast.
Yes.
And I heard people used to come to Whitehead for a
Yes.
month every year. And then this year they were all down. The first thing I seen walking in with the girl was James Johnson.
Oh, yes.
That's where did he get here? So I discovered then he was married to this
Yeah.
one. And they were coming down for their holidays too. So of course he came over to the counter before he went out. He says, "I think I know you."
Ah,
I said, "Yes, I think you should, Mr. Johnson."
ah.
But a very nice man. Well, then she died.
Mhm.
And he married another girl from round about Kilcranaghan. He had two daughters.
Right.
One of the daughters married the minister and don't know who the other one married.
I think I never thought he made it totally.
Oh, did he?
He used to have an
married.
office down
Oh,
Church
he
Street.
never went, he did. He had actually
But his
died.
main office was Draperstown.
Draperstown. He lived there, just beside the office.
A little man called Devlin was a clerk.
Oh,
Used to walk very quickly.
just leave that to the bus now.
What's this
He
they call
would,
him?
John Devlin's son. And
Yeah.
then he meant to leave a message with there and he would just take the message, say, "Now just leave that to the bus now."
Ah,
But he was a nice man, James Johnson.
Oh,
he never went
both
near him
handsome
at all.
and gentle, eh?
He was. Well, his mother was very nice.
I know.
I say, don't ever remember old Alec Johnson, but remember the mother.
Well, he was from, the Johnsons were probably from Ballymohan.
I don't know where they came from.
But they built up a great business.
I think the old man had a lot of business, a lot of mortgages he used to
Yeah.
have. If you had money, like some poor farmer wanted money and
I
you
know.
lent him the money. but he took the deeds of his place.
Oh, that's the standard practice of the
And
bank
then I
thief.
think that people then stopped that for they thought that was very unlucky.
Oh, I see.
Giving these mortgages,
I know.
you see, that didn't they end up like it? Sometimes on the day the man died, they would close in on the weather
I know
and
that.
sell their place
I
for
know
them.
that.
You see, they were known, and not chances or Margaret, were known to lift the baby and the wee
And
cradle
take
and
the
put it
cradle.
out, put the baby in the cradle out on the front street in the
An eviction, like.
eviction, you see, and that's why people thought about, I'll take no mortgage, I'll loan the money if I have it, and sometimes God helped them too, £20 or £30 for that.
Oh, I know.
Like when they lost their home, as long as the man was there, you see, that was all right, but they made use of the widow woman.
Yeah, but 20 or 30 pounds to a very small family was a lot of money anyway.
Oh, an awful lot of
And
money.
there would be a long time repaying a debt about that
But
proportion.
they said then that the good thing came to was the Ballymena loan
Loan
bank.
company, yeah.
That put them that they didn't go to
Well, then
these
Walker's
people.
had a bank.
Well, oh, well, they never had got the name of doing
No, but they had a
anything
proper
wrong.
bank, had
They
they?
had. Down in
John and James.
John James, and they lived in that big house now, it's a
And their
furniture
sister
place.
too.
They had.
What was her
Mary.
name? Mary.
Tall, stately person.
But they would be stately.
Oh, they were nice people.
What
Remember
happened?
then one of them was bank manager for the Belfast Bank in the end of his days.
Oh, would it be Belfast, yes.
Belfast, just be down Rainy Street.
And which
You
one
know
would that
where,
be? I know. Dan McMaster's
Well,
Hotel.
that's where it was. And then they bought that other property. Money house something.
And where did the Mary one go?
She died down there on Rainy Street.
And was there not one of them married what did I
The
say
two
now?
men never married.
No, but a girl. She not, thank you.
Oh, I never remember anyone
That's a long
married.
time
Tall,
ago.
stately person.
Jackson, was there one of them married a Jackson, no?
Not that they knew of her,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they could have. I remember her, they always kept
Very not a girl.
two girls in the house, father.
Oh, two servants.
Mhm. But Mary worked with them. Supposed to be one of these private housekeepers.
I see.
And were very good at helping the house there.
They had a very
And,
big house down
Oh,
there.
an awful house.
It's down at the
Awful
bottom
size
of
house.
Rainy Street, it's a furniture store now.
Oh,
A
a
large.
big black stone building. You know, nearly opposite the Rainy School, not quite, but very nearly off. Remember the trees all around it at that?
And the crows and the trees.
The crows, and then out the walk is planting.
That's true.
You pass through that.
Oh, I know that well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They had land out there.
They had land out there, and they had a house too out there. Remember Mrs. Niblock's family were in it.
Oh, well, there's two houses at the bridge.
Sure,
but
but
that-
then away in through the plant there was a house.
Oh, there
Cowsley.
was.
Old Cowsley lived in it.
Ah, that's right.
Mrs.
Ah, she did.
Miss Niblock was born and raised there.
That's right. Well, now, so James and John, they were.
James and John, one of them was small.
He was a little rosy cheeked
And
man.
yes, not very quick, we short
He
step. Another was a tall gentleman.
Was he the bank manager?
He was the bank manager. And James was kind of looking after the
Yeah,
land
farm
all
and all.
and that sort of thing. But they were very nice people, the Walkers.
Oh, yes.
They were very nice.
Well, then, do you remember, was it Busser Damon or something?
Oh, Busser Damon.
What was it, Busser they called?
But he
or
used to
Buffer?
drive and McManaman's, and he drove in the hotel for a while, the same
Yeah.
car. Sometimes he'd go out on the horse,
Uh-huh.
the Bussy Diamond. Well, then he had a brother married down Rainy Street, and she
Diamond.
was a Protestant, and he just stopped going anywhere with her.
Diamond.
Diamond. I'm sure money gave you some of that.
Oh, there was a delicate looking family, Diamond.
There was. One of them
Sure.
swallowed a penny and used to call it a penny money back. And he was awfully ill, and they said that the copper was poisoning him.
Did he work in Shields's?
He did.
As kind of a message
And there
board
was
for John Shields.
yes. And the other fellow was tall and thin too. And he used to clean the Rainy School.
That's right.
And Mrs. Time was a big tall woman. She used to go out to
Aye.
the doctors and maternity cases, mama. Handy woman. Fine woman she was, Mrs. Diamond.
But then coming up that street there were the Richies then.
The Ritchie crowd. The Ritchies moved so much at one time. I think they were on every street in the town
Is that right?
for a while.
But their father was a nice old gentleman and their mother a nice old woman.
Also were. Robert Ritchie, and I
Oh,
remember
aye.
this time we had a kind of a fancy good musical shop, you know.
That's
Some
right.
crowd was getting a band, a mouth organ band. So they went to Robert anyhow. George all these mouth organs for them.
Yes.
And then they would collect, of course, and pay him. Oh, by the way, 5 years after the band was out. And I remember he was standing watching it. Joe Walsh said, well now Robert, that's a nice wee band. He says, oh that's the band, he says, Joe, but I was the mug. Oh, you be the mug. Didn't know that everyone in mouth organs off me. I never got 6 months.
Yeah.
If I'm not the mug, who is? And there's still something nice in the Ritchies.
Oh, yeah.
There's Harold Ritchie's a very nice band.
Yes.
Harold's a very nice wee boy.
But then Malcolm McGill, he was in the
Malcolm
army.
McGill. Well, do you know that McGill's returned was great bad.
Where are
They
they?
were indeed. Millie McGill's grandfather was Catholic.
From where?
Round about Montrefell,
That's right.
round the
And what about
districts
the
and-
Taylor McGill around your street?
He was a brother Malachy, you know.
Yeah. Oh,
Big
Malcolm, it's not Malachy.
Malcolm.
Oh, you can't mix up
Malcolm
the
McGill.
Malcolm in that case.
Wee Malcolm,
Uh,
George McGill, and Sam McGill.
yes.
Did you never see him round about the workhouse?
Oh, I did, surely, it's boiler man.
He was born in man. His son living out there in Beachland. Very big fella.
What happened to Paddy Murray's ones that used to live around there, did you ever hear?
I never heard.
They were Dribberson originally.
They were. He was Tripperstown. I don't know where she was from. Remember, he was barman in Welsh Hotel for long.
I see, yeah.
Strangely enough, I think when I met them in Canada, they
Huh?
went out the same time as I was.
Did they? Well, you know, there was the spell in Whitehead and
And
they
they
were
settled
going
in Halifax.
in Halifax.
Oh, I see.
They were in a very bad time in Canada during the Depression.
And I believe during the Depression it was very bad in Canada.
Well, they had a bad time because I did see them in Canada.
He was a big man. And he took
I
that
think
publication.
mine was over a couple of years ago, so called him Bryson's.
Did she?
That'll be their home.
I never heard anything of him.
Now, when I stood around the McCulloughs, you know, the head constable of
Yes,
the Murray family, there were two. There was a boy, I think there was 2 children.
yes.
And we always were in Murray's. And those new houses were just being built to Ban's houses at that time.
Henry built those.
Anyway, you see? And that was how I remember them. And then we met in Canada afterwards. in
I
Halifax.
never heard what happened. Nice big fella he was.
Well, John O'Neill, did you ever hear what happened to John, the Master's John? What's
Well, I don't know, Sissy Fern was just telling me a few days ago that he's dead. Joe.
No, John.
No.
John was the father, but it was the son, not
No,
Joe.
John was the son. Very
John.
definitely. A fella used to ride a bicycle very fierce.
Oh, you mean Master Neil's son,
Master
John?
O'Neill's John.
Oh, he went to America.
He did. And he called in many O'Neills when I was there.
So we,
Hey.
And
well,
Harry O'Neill too.
Harry Neil called very often.
Yeah,
And
he
was
was there
at
every
Minnie's,
Sunday.
Minnie's funeral, Harry was.
He was there every Sunday.
was that
John.
Henry O'Neill,
Henry O'Neill,
the teacher one?
the teacher one. And at the place during the war, he was as far as England, but didn't come home.
Which war? First World War.
No,
Second World
the
War.
Second World
Was
War.
he still alive at that time?
He's still, oh, he's not very long dead. He's dead since Peter McKenna was here.
That's right.
He lived to a good age, but never came back again. Again,
He was a
war.
wag.
Oh, was he not? God bless us. I was in your house in Church Street, 20 times when he come from school to bedtime. He couldn't go up the street nor down the street, because there, Anna, there was something fresh. You know, but he was a likeable character.
Always seemed to
wild,
be, yeah.
Very wild. And it was
Yeah.
very clever.
And look
He
at how
taught me-
sober-sided the old master was.
Oh, how sober-sided.
Did you hear the story that was told by John? Mama told it. John on the tear, you see.
Yes.
And he eventually arrived home this night and stumbled into the door. And he said, John falls the first time. So then he stumbled at the bottom of the stairs and he says, John falls the second time. And the master and Mrs. Lee were standing at the top of the stairs and he said, John meets his afflicted mother.
Did it, see, it could be, too.
Oh, the master, and Sir Charlie was his dad.
Poor Charlie indeed, huh?
Charlie's now a done old man.
I suppose,
Never out now at all. It's just as bad.
And they live down where the master lives.
Just lived there. And you know, I think he's got queer. Because he went round shopping for brushes, you know, for taking better away.
Clean easy.
Yeah.
And do you know, he didn't talk when he came into the house, like Charlie Neal at all. When Charlie at the shop, he could have held a conversation. But he came in to sell brushes and he would open the case and then the nose and then they take out the brush. Now there's a very good brush. Mrs. Clark of Upperlands bought those two of those of me last week. But every time he came, he could have Mrs. Clark of Upperlands.
She was.
Well, I said to him this day, you know, Charlie, there's great difference in Mrs. Clark of Upperlands banking account and ours. So I said, we can't just take it because it's Mrs. Clark's taking it. Well, the thing was with Charlie, no matter how little, you didn't like to turn Charlie out. But he's queer, and then he couldn't hold a conversation at all. I don't think he's ever out of the house at all now. Well, then they had a time with him.
Yes.
The master, I do really believe like that the master did put them astray. I think
was too rigid
O'Neill
altogether. He was too.
would have managed the family all right. But he didn't want them. Sunday wouldn't let them read a paper, he wouldn't let them read a book next the Bible.
I know.
And then John looked for the special piece on the Bible, read my father, and then that horrified me again. And drink. Oh, the devil was in it. But Mrs. O'Neill, in her own nice quiet way, always had my sideboard, a bottle of Sandyman port and a bottle of whiskey.
Yes.
And the matter was, he liked it or not when she had first said, she brought out the glasses and
I
had a
know.
wee nip. And he would have said nothing to her. But she just managed him nicely. Of course, he never would have been anywhere only for her, you know.
She was a
Secret
nice
cows
lady.
and sold milk and all that sort of
Yes.
thing. But he was still making children out of them. Now, even the day he died, he wouldn't give Charlie Neal a latchkey.
Is that right?
No, didn't. And if he was going to the fair, he wouldn't let Charlie even go to sell a car.
No.
You know nothing. Rather keen to sell it, rather keen. Well, you know, Charlie was a man now till he felt this. And then Charlie started to kick against the traces. After he came, remember,
He
there
joined
was
the
only
army.
government there and he was buying hay and
He was.
And then he came home again, well then he could take the drink and he didn't mind much about father rearing up and all that sort of thing.
Oh, the
Mother
father's
would
very rich.
put him to
person.
bed, you see. But this time anyhow, Charlie went on one of his sprees and he could get nobody to keep him company. Like, it was all right going out for a drink at night, but they weren't just prepared to go out all day for the drink. But he got James to be doing, Lord mercy.
James was good,
James,
all right.
And James, of course, had no money to spend but come to Toon. So Charlie and he went off to Toon and drank in the hotel there.
Yes.
And then come out to go home at supper, matter of fact. Come on, McGowan, we'll go to Belfast.
Yes.
Let that bus go on the Thursdays. Took the last bus to Belfast. Had a few more drinks in Belfast. And then went in to this house to stop, wherever it was. But anyhow, they asked him, if we can leave out the shoes to be cleaned. James, my God, I've only a shoe and a half, I can't leave mine out. Charlie, I'll put yours out, mine's only a shoe and a half. And he put Charlie's out.
Yes.
But anyhow, in the performance, Charlie lost the feet and legs, you know, when he got a few days. Oh, really, he fell was all. So he fell out of the bed. And James was trying to pull him in.
Yes.
But the result trying to pull him in, it pulled the back of the shirt and he pulled the behind out of his trousers. You know the way that Charlie to him. But anyhow, he got into bed somehow and the next morning the shoes, Charlie's shoes was left at the door. But the back was out of the shirt, the behind was out of the trousers. But Charlie still had some money and he went to go to some of the gents' outfitters.
Yes.
Get a shirt and pair of trousers. So he told James he was going to walk close behind him,
Yes.
that nobody would see the behind side of his trousers. And James, he did walk behind him. And they went into the outfitters and then went into the fitting up room, you see, to change his shirt and all. And Charlie just got the shirt and the trousers and left them nicely down.
Yes, I know.
And walked out. So James, he thought, as he used to say, St. Bridget would be worrying about him. So he had 4 and 10pence.
Yeah.
See, it had cost him nothing, but he'd only started off with 4 and 10pence. He said, Charlie, I'm going home. Stay where you are. I'm not staying. My mother, oh, good St. Bridget, be praying for her and fortune something. I'm not sticking all the night. So he got into the bus anyhow and got free to Macrobelt.
Yeah.
But got out at Campswell in case an inspector would come on the bus. And he still came home with 4 and 10pence. So poor Mrs. O'Neill, she was worried about him. And some day in the hand out the master, looking at it, said he was down our house.
Yes.
She master went, tell Charlie I want him. Well, I knew Charlie was tomb at this time. I said, Charlie's not here, ma. Yes, yeah. I said, don't you dare to contradict me. He's not here. And what do I want with Charlie O'Neill? I says, a son of yours, nobody wants in the house. Like that. Don't you dare to contradict me. He's not in here at all. I was told, I said, that's not worrying me, what you were told, you see. When he was up the street. So I said to Nan Colligan, stay you must shop, I go down and tell Mrs. O'Neill. When please had old Phil Simon down and told Mrs. O'Neill that he was in the timber tail.
Yes.
Jamie doing was with him. And I says, somebody told us now here's the master up. So don't you tell I want to come down to tell you now, but I knew you're more sensitive than he has. So Charlie arrived home on the last bus the next night from Belfast. All money was spent, so he had to come home.
Oh, well, James was a good boozing companion
Oh,
for
there
the...
was he not. He had heard James to tell him that.
Sure.
Then Charlie was up after that, and I asked him, was all this true about? He said, it wasn't indeed, he said. I hope wherever he stopped, I'd never see the woman in the house again. It was much dangerous. Because he only got drunk. He didn't want, if he got a couple of drinks, to go home to the master.
No.
He burned his bush and then he just got drunk. And then the day before he got married, Charlie did. He came over to me and I says, well, Charlie, big step tomorrow. He's just round his out. He Kathleen. He was one coming. I says, what about Charlie? He says, to ask your advice, am I doing the right thing? I said, you're a bit late and they asked me. I couldn't advise you. I says, ask somebody else that's married, Charlie. There's no chance of me being married. Now you asking advice somebody else. I says, what about asking your mother? The mother said nothing, but I don't think she's very keen. Well, I said, sure, you're a long while engaged, and you didn't want to be engaged, then why'd you stop it before now? Don't feel like going on with it. And when I says, Charlie, talk to somebody else who's more experienced than me. And that's the way it went off that evening with a teacher from Ballinderry.
What was her
Just
name?
get married to her. And say, Wheeler.
Oh, she's not from this county town.
County down. Well, right enough.
But she made a man of him in a way.
Oh, not Dodge.
Did she not?
Ever since he had before he'd known that. Oh, no.
Oh dear, I'm wrong there.
She, Charlie had an awful habit if he had a drink on. If he'd met you, Mona, he'd told you how lovely you were. And just what he thought of you. And would you marry him? Well, he'd done the same with Molly, but the crowd knew Charlie at the
I
dance.
didn't take him seriously.
And then they said, oh, certainly, Charlie, you'll be sober the morning, come back and propose to me. Like, they took this as a joke over. But she came up anyhow, and he proposed to her. Right enough the next day, Charlie told me he never remembered a thing about it. But she rang him up on the phone like Mrs. Tom McManaman and said, when would he go for the ring? And he says, what ring? Oh, she says, you proposed to me last night and there's other people there. He says, not much of a process for mine. But she did follow him up now, that was truthful. And she was temporary in the post office. And she came back and stopped Mrs. Haggerty and sent for him. Every time she came, and she used to ring him up. And he would send the girl out of the shop, go up and tell that old so-and-so I'm away drunk somewhere. And with all that, she hung on to him. Hung on to him. But then you see, he never cared two hoots about anything. Now she doesn't care two hoots, like he's staying in the house. He's just getting being lonely by himself there.
Well, there's...
I think she thought that a lot of money. Elsie did. She said she'd have to be very particular who she associated with when she come to Markerville, because they were one of the best families in it, the O'Neills, and they were very well connected. with Mr. Keenan, the leading butcher of Northern Ireland, and Mr. Higgins was a native of Sir Lawrence's. You should have to watch your company. Mrs. Higgins says, daughter, I'd advise you to watch your company right enough, but you learn more before you're a year in the town. To Mrs. Higgins, she wanted Charlie to build her bungalow. Oh no, Mrs. Higgins says, just take the stone and go and milk the cows the way his mother did. Gee, I wouldn't go near no cow.
Well,
So that was just the end of Charlie. Like, she's not a woman at harm, she's a silly, stupid sort of a woman, you know. That was sense, that she couldn't see that. And then Charlie came on to drink, she used to do a painting match. Charlie said, that's nice. Someone left me, oh, just throw right through the ones, see big feet and all.
so much for that.
Oh dear,
They,
they were the funniest romance that ever was.
I know.
And then Master, he had put up with this. She was criticising Mr. Neil's house. Mr. Neil's house was all right. It was a comfortable house and nobody was going hungry in it. So the old woman took this very ill. She told both of them to go out and get a house of their own. And she was very proud and worked very hard to get that home. And was very happy to have it. And when it didn't please you, go back to our glass herrings and don't be in my house again. And right enough, she stayed away till old Mr. Neil died. And then the master used to come looking creamery butter. You see, they always used their own to the cows, and then after that they'd buy a Mexican butter.
Yes.
But then he was saying, get me, and now, yeah, to the grand lady that my son is married, would you give me £1 of creamy butter, please? The grand lady, my daughter, but she lived on with the old master then.
I know.
Till he died. Oh, there's a split up, but I think there's really the old master, you know.
It was very hard.
They had a bit, was it Courtney Junk? Was there, who's this used to, who's Neil's brother?
Oh,
Martin Marlin.
Martin.
Oh, Martin used to get drink.
Martin was good friend.
Ah, but she was kind to him right now.
Oh, she was very good to him.
And the
She
master,
was.
even though he was rigid, he permitted Martin to
He
live there.
permitted
now,
Martin, he
was
used to
the master.
lecture Martin about the drink,
Ah,
but was never insulting to
No,
him
I
in any
know.
other way. But she was herself, Mrs. O'Neill was a very
oh, it's a
woman.
good lady, she was.
Like, she knew the master's ways, and she never sometimes she just said, no, that'll do, master, and in his quiet way. But like, she'd never say anything against him. She helped in that shop and everything.
That's right.
And look at how good she was to Annie too.
Look, well, Annie was a good soul too.
Oh dear. You know this, she bought all her clothes for her till the day she died.
Yes,
And paid for her holidays every year before.
indeed, that's
When
good.
she was married and all.
Ah,
And you know that broke her heart about Annie.
you know.
Like as she said, her only little girl. And Annie was very musical and a singer and all that sort of thing. See the way it was afflicted. Now, for 7 years. For 7 years. And they took her everywhere and they took her then
Oh, is that who's?
to some doctor at Matthew in England. And the mom went over with her. And the doctor said, Master Institute, he says she hasn't much longer to go. He says, keep her health built up. That'll be 7 years. And mentally she'll be as well as ever. But he says, this wish is fussing. It's taken a lot out of her trying to keep her built up. And then she's only better for a few months. And was quite well. Back to playing the piano and all the rest of it. Oh, she was awfully afflicted, Anna. The poor thing, terribly afflicted. And yet, she knew everything. If somebody sneered at her, that is the worst part of her. She noticed that. And like, the bell was ringing, the clock was straight. So we blessed, oh, another hour I've wasted. How can I account to God for that? And at night, Mary Walsh told me, from 12 o'clock at night, as long as you stay awake, she was as sensible as could be. Just went off the next morning. I
Did
said,
it
what?
come on quickly to us?
It did.
Did it come on
It
quickly at
came
the
on
beginning?
quick. It came on after the birth of her last child.
That's
I think she had those babies pretty quick. It was just after Anne was born. And they didn't notice anything. The
Would it be
doctor.
puerperal?
That could be.
I think we'll get Tony a drop of tea. It wouldn't be as long as it took you to tea would come on.
Never moved.
Didn't move up to early as 1912 to
I left, I think, in 1913.
Then I must have been 3 when I moved up.
Oh, I see you would be married because
That's when
I associate her living at the Fair Hill.
Yes, it was about.
Well, how old are you now?
I'm 55.
Well, then that would make you 1912.
No, 1911 we were born.
1911. Oh no, you were in Church Street.
And I was born in church, but I want to know. I want to know.
Oh, so
No,
no,
you know
no.
that. I want to
Have a
know.
cigarette.
I want to know. Surely we must have moved up to the Fair Hill say about 1913.
But still no. I must have been still when you moved up. Because I remember coming in.
Where were you living that time?
In King Street, where Money Crilly lives now. But I remember now when I think of it,
When Mama was picking you up to go to school.
I was living there, and then before I left your mama was living up Meeting Street.
Right.
Because I
And then
remember,
that was 1913.
I remember going to that house,
Yeah.
and your mother getting the fire going.
Yes.
And the Fair Hill house.
Yes, and Petey getting the potatoes in the saucepan put on for the dinner. He said you'd done it late in the evening.
Well, we'd only ever done our Mama come up from school.
That was it. And then in down Church Street, she had Grace Kersley.
Yeah.
Grace went up with us to the Fair Hill.
It was good. Well, then this is
Yes.
after Grace left.
Grace
Was
was
it?
still with us in the Fair Hill because
She must have left soon after you went to the Fair Hill.
what did you say to her?
I can't remember Grace. I think she was with us up at for how long, I don't
She was at
know.
the Fair Hill with us.
Because
She
I
was in
remember
Church Street
Tommy
before
Collins was courting
Yeah.
her,
That's it, right.
and he was courting her while we were up at the Fair Hill.
Yes.
But I associate her being in the Fair Hill with the First World War,
Oh, she was. That was the
and
14.
also in 1913, I think, because I remember seeing Redmond's volunteers drilling and Joe McGuckin at the foot of the Fair Hill with their trainer.
Yes,
He had been in the militia or
Yes.
something.
that's right.
And I associated watching them from the Fair Hill, and presumably I wouldn't have come up from Church Street to watch them if they'd been parading
see,
in
they-
Church Street.
Yeah.
Your
And
mum and
all I can speak about this of the bonfire, 1918, when Louis was out at the bonfire, but I was looking out the Fair Hill window as Mama and Papa.
Yes.
You see, because we
For
were
the
with
armistice.
but Louis went out, and it's in November, 1918.
But then, Winnie, Kathleen, I also remember seeing the candles in the windows of houses for the Home Rule passing,
That was on
which would be
the
1912.
13th of September.
Yes,
That was.
that'd be 1913.
Was that not 14?
No, I don't. The war had begun in August of 1914, and the Home Rule Act had been
13.
passed the year before,
That was Matt
and was
went to
still on the
America the
statute
next
book.
morning.
Who?
Matt and Winnie went to America the
I
next
see, that'd be
morning.
1913.
It was 1913
The-
because remember it was the night and they didn't intend to have any farewell in the house. But before we knew the house was full, they had a farewell. Nobody got to bed. But Ma'am said, go and get a packet of candles. And
Yeah.
put them on one. I said, just a minute to finish this. Matt says, Toddy, your eyes wrong. You drop everything and go.
Ah.
And he went and got them, and all
Ah.
upstairs windows
Ah.
were lit with these candles, and then we all went round the town
I
to
watched
see
them
this.
that.
Home Rule bill was on the statue book
That's
last.
right.
And for years before that, no matter what house you went into, Home Rule was discussed.
That's right.
And when he used to go out to Larkin to Glenmaquill for
Yes.
buttermilk
Yeah.
and eggs, and she used to take Eileen Leslie, and Eileen wasn't
Yes,
stayed
yeah.
out with her.
Ah.
But she went out this day anyhow, and the whole discussion was Home Rule.
It would,
And
ah.
poor Eileen didn't understand what we were talking
No,
about.
I know, naturally.
And when she came near the town, she says, oh, Winnie, I'm awfully glad we didn't meet that man.
Ah.
And I said, what man, Eileen, Pat? She says, Mr. Home Rule.
Indeed, ah.
Very
You see,
good.
and before that, like, there was all this discussion on
Oh,
Home
I
Rule.
know.
It was going on for so many,
Oh,
and
that.
we were rejoicing that night. Well, then
Ah.
it was after that, right now, the Irish Volunteers started.
That's
The B
right.
men and then the Irish Volunteers.
That's the volunteer force.
Us and then the Irish Volunteers, they started.
So if you're trying to fix it, the time of her going there.
I'd like to find out too now, when you said Winnie went to America, did she?
Yes, she went.
Along with your brother? No?
Yes.
Well, now can you remember what ship they sailed on?
What's that?
What ship?
White Star.
Or did they leave from Belfast or
No,
did they leave from Liverpool?
They left from Derry.
Right,
Derry.
there was an anchor line there, must be.
White Star.
No.
The tickets were
White
sent.
Star and Liverpool and Cork. The anchor line always went to the north.
Oh, I see, yeah.
No, it was
I-
the
I must
tickets
be-
were sent from America.
Huh?
The tickets were
Were
sent
sent
from
from
America.
But is Martha going to run it himself?
Matthew and his nephew.
But your Martha Stewart was hardly ever sober.
That's because he wasn't sober this morning.
I don't think he's ever.
No, he says.
He's never full,
I
but
says,
he's
I says,
nothing,
Martha, have you got the horse? Remember? I don't know what he answered.
But your Martha doesn't drive a vehicle.
He doesn't. Listen,
No,
I
it ran away the last year's snow work.
I ran away with last year's snow, he said, the horse. He was going around with the milk.
well, you know, my mother says she lived in the south.
But how did he accumulate enough money to go and even open a pub?
That's sure to that Christmas.
Had he had himself or only the driver? Was it not Ramsey?
It was Ramsey, but then he took it over, you see.
Did he?
Oh,
He
he
left
did.
it till night.
And he lived in an old house of Ramsey's.
Yes.
Minus furniture.
Minus.
And no coal, always the sticks, doesn't matter whether it's your trees or somebody else's, Martha had the sticks. And some of the men from the country used to go in at night, Martha felt like going to bed, he went to bed and shouted down from the room to them.
Carried on the conversation.
And he's where he delivered milk, Mrs. Patsy McKee. He would get a cup of tea there in the morning and somewhere else he would get a bite of dinner. You know, just customers.
We used to get somebody in our house.
No.
He would. He did, surely.
Out in the other house.
Ah. Martha would have some. Go on.
Well, that was, you see, there's out nothing in food there. This would have a cup of tea had in the morning. And he, because
But they paid a lot in drink.
he did, but he's pretty shrewd with it. His cost only that drink, and he didn't drink as much when he's not a guest. That's
Oh,
what he
see.
did from he came round to the Masonic Hall. Drank more there, you see.
Was he living where?
He was in the Masonic Hall, the caretaker.
I say.
Well, I think the place wasn't kept up to order, so they
No.
got not a bungalow
Uh-huh.
down in Westland Road somewhere. And this is a nephew of his that's in the pub with him. Used to drive the milk van for him.
Well, you know, it's the funniest thing to think of Martha Stewart going in a pub.
Oh, it's.
Do you know, Father Louis, that he had a daughter married, and she's 15 years ago? And nobody ever thought Martha Stewart had £1.
I didn't think Martha Stewart was ever married.
And he went to see the daughter when he get married. Oh, he says, Dorothy, suppose you could do with £1 or two. Well, she says, I'll have to do without it. There's no place I can get £1 or two, and that's what I've earned. And he handed her £100. That was the truth. Well, that shook me then about Martha. I thought when you sent her more near than full man.
That's true.
£100.
Well, it'll be a funny public house, I should
You
think.
might
Where
can
is
see
the
it.
pub name?
Pat Keenan's pub.
Beside the
Oh,
butcher
it's
shop.
Indeed. Has he installed in it? Has he?
Oh, he's installed in for a couple of 3 weeks now.
There'll be the hunt balls there.
The
hunt meetings will
Well,
be
now
there.
who'll go in there? Says, what are you talking about? Sheriff, all the Stuart Brigade go
Yeah.
to drink there, he'll have a good business.
That's true.
I would say so.
You
Yeah.
see Jimmy's family, and they're all fond of a wee drop. And he says, man, I'll not give it to them without the money, don't you worry.
Well, he's given up the milk run then, has he?
No, he's not. He has the milk.
He was on the milk run this morning.
Mm.
When I asked, where's your horse? He said, it went out with the snow.
Ah,
He has a van, a truck business.
A truck.
Mhm.
well, it's so funny. I don't think Martha could read or write.
I don't believe it.
No,
There
I
was
don't.
up trees when it went from Silsworth Slicker. How many kids? Up trees.
Weren't going to school at all.
They had the happiest crowd. Joe Kilt was carrying the Belfast,
Yes.
you know, at the time. Well, then, Stuart's, the kids all got together, you see. And they had a great time. Where everything was moved from Kilsby to Greece. So he took him always home on Wednesday morning. And one Lord of Mercy was sent out early on Wednesday morning to see that the children were all right and that things were in the house before Joe came home. For he was bad tempered. And she was always afraid that he'd kill some of the children if he started to beat them. But when he went out and she enjoyed them, she used to come out and laughing. You see about them. She man says, send you no more when I'm friend for you're no good. They're not a bit afraid. He sent me out this morning anyhow. See that they've everything, if they have it out of the house back again, before that man comes home, and be you away from the house before Joe Keeld appears. So I went to Keeld's, the door was open, and I called, Frank called, Jim called, Rose, no answer, I'm down in what is the parlour. There wasn't one stick of furniture on it. The table, the armchairs, couch and all was away. And I looked and at the beds, the blankets and the quilts were off. Why, thank God bless this spring weather now, and where are they taking these two? Went round all the stables and outhouses and gone and started to pray we'd get them.
Yeah.
Round the house and away up to the Windmill Hill, calling them. So got near the Windmill Hill I could see these beautiful hammocks. Double blankets, none of you ever saw them. Tied up in the trees, all around the Windmill Hill. So before I went up, I got a big stick out of the hedge, so I called and I whacked away at the blankets. And your father's down at Milltown,